Yeah.
Great. Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. We're just waiting for everybody to jump on in. And this will be recorded, just a heads up.
Is it supposed to stop
The link isn't working. Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to be waiting just another minute or so to let people come on board. We've got a great turnout today. So I think we're just about ready to get started. Okay, so we shall. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great event, I think, here, a very important one. The candidates for mayor, this incredibly important election as New York City faces the pandemic and the need to recover from this pandemic. And about the pandemic, we just heard moments ago, unfortunately, from Andrew Yang, that he has suffered a bit of a setback from COVID and is not going to be able to join us today. And of course, we all wish him well and a rapid recovery. I want to thank the downtown clubs that are co-hosting with us today. The clubs that are sponsoring this event represent Manhattan from 14th Street all the way down. So we've got an incredible turnout here, as you can see, representing all of our clubs and the people that we care about in our communities. So let me give folks a chance to say hi. By the way, I am Richard Corman. I'm president of Downtown Independent Democrats. I want to first introduce my co-host for today, which is Chung Sito of UDO. Chung, will say hi.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this important forum as we welcome all the mayoral candidates, as well as voters who want to know how the candidates position themselves in policy and actions that will help get us out of this pandemic, and particularly issues that relate to downtown here in New York City. So thank you. Again, UDO appreciates all the partners in planning this important forum, and we're looking forward to a healthy engagement for everyone.
Thank you, Chung. And Village Independent Democrats, another one of our co-sponsors today. We have Mark Fitzgerald and Cameron Krause on. When do you want to say hi?
Hi, we are very happy to be here with all of our partner clubs from downtown, myself and my co-president, Cameron Krause, and of course, all of our members and the members of all of these dedicated downtown Democratic clubs. It'll be a great forum.
And I see Jeremy on. Can't miss him with a pink background. Jeremy from Grand Street. Can you unmute yourself, Jeremy? Nope, we will come back to you.
I got it now.
Here you
Rich.
are.
Sorry. Thanks all for joining me today for the Super Bowl. I'm really glad to see a lot of Grand Street Dems members on this call, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you all tomorrow night at our endorsement meeting. And thank you, Richard and Chung, for, I think when we split up who was going to do which forums, it was probably obvious that this was going to be the one that required the most logistical challenge. And that's why I didn't volunteer for it. So thanks very much for taking that on.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I have to remember to be quicker to volunteer for earlier ones next time. I see Tati Yono from CODA. Can you?
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Tati Jorio, the co-president of CODA, Coalition for a District Alternative. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from the candidates. And I'm so glad to be co-sponsoring with the other downtown Democratic clubs. And thanks to all the CODA members and everyone who's on the call.
Thank you, Tati. And also co-sponsoring today are New Downtown Dems, and who is on? Patrick Cannell, Michael Kramer.
Hi, thanks, Richard. I'm Patrick Cannell, co-president of New Downtown Dems. On behalf of my co-president, Michael Kramer, and all the New Downtown Dems, I want to welcome everybody. And thank you to Richard and to Chung for co-moderating today. This is the fourth in the series of the Downtown Coalition of Clubs candidate forums. And as Richard mentioned, I think this is one that'll have certainly the most excitement. It's been impressive to me watching these forums and how the clubs have all worked together. We're working together and working stronger. And I look forward to hearing from the candidates today about how they envision doing exactly that and moving forward and getting New York to a place of recovery. So welcome, everybody, and I can't wait to see what is in store for today.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I couldn't agree more. This is we've got almost 250 people on here already, representing, as I said earlier, Manhattan from 14th Street down. And the last club as part of our co-sponsoring group is Village Reform Democratic Club. And where is Ray Klein? Are you on, Ray?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Well, I'm here at VRDC. I've been actually talking to people in my club about visiting in. In fact, I just got a call saying, where am I? So I'm here, and so are we.
All right. If anyone else wants to know where you are, we now know. So just a quick run through of the rules for today and how we're going to manage this forum. We've got a sequence of candidates as we've laid out in some of our emails. Each candidate is going to have approximately 20 minutes, just slightly under, in order to give us a little time between each one. We're going to give the candidates 4 minutes to talk to us about their view of the campaign, their key interests and policies, and we've asked them to particularly focus on how it will affect us downtown in housing and in public safety and in education. And then we're going to open it up to questions. Each question is going to be limited to 45 seconds, and we mean that seriously. We want to give as many people an opportunity to ask as possible. So we're going to give you a 10-cent warning. Keep an eye out for David Weiss putting up 10 fingers. And then at 45 seconds, be ready because we're going to cut you off. So make sure you get your question in before that cutoff. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer the questions. And at the end, if we have time, we're going to ask each candidate a couple of couple, 2 or 3 quick, call them lightning round questions and get their response to them. So with that, we have our first candidate joining us, and I hope he's here, Eric Adams. Eric, are you here? I don't. I need to mention one other thing while we're still looking for Eric Adams. We're going to take questions in the order of hands raised in your virtual hand. So please make sure you understand, you see how in your particular Zoom you're able to raise your hand. We are going to try to spread the questions around so that people who haven't asked the question get an opportunity to do so. So we have people who have questions already, even before anybody has spoken.
Richard, I think it seems like it might be possible that the other person who is named Richard Corman is actually Eric Adams. So can you unmute the other Richard Corman?
If I can find them, yes. How about that?
I grabbed it, Richard, and also anybody else who's recently logged on using a link, there is a broken link that will identify you as Richard Corman, so please re-identify yourself. I think Eric Adams had that problem, and I know a couple others have.
Well, this could be great if I get to have my choice as to who I'm going to be going forward. But Eric,
hey,
have you been able to mute yourself?
Thank you for
sorry about the confusion.
Thank you for whoever identified that I was Richard and not Eric. I was trying to get unmuted. Let me know when I should start, because I always come with my own stopwatch so I could move in time.
Please begin.
Thank you so much. And I want to use, I believe you said I have 4 minutes as an opening?
Yes.
Yes. So I want to really spend the 4 minutes of giving many of you an overview of who I am and why I am running for mayor of the city of New York. Really, this journey started many years ago, back when I was a young man growing up in South Jamaica, Queens. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, and I was arrested by police officers. And my brother and I were beat bad by those police officers. And I still think my brother is dealing with mental health issues right now because of that. But during almost 42 years ago, a group of civil rights leaders came to me and 12 other young men and asked us to go into law enforcement and fight from within. This was after a young man, a businessman named Arthur Miller, was killed by a police chokehold. And I reluctantly went in and started an organization called 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. And we were able to spend 22 years of my career fighting for police reform and showing that we could have justice and safety at the same time. But little did I know that during my time in the police department, I was going to be able to use another skill that I had. I was a computer programmer, and I became part of a small team of police officers, special assignment, where our goal was to deal with the real crime fighting issues that we were having in the city. For the most part, we threw up our hands and we believed that we could not be safe in the city. We were experiencing 2,000 homicides a year, almost 98,000 robberies, and the equivalent amount of felonious assaults. We came together and used the first of its kind, a real-time data and computer system to start identifying how do we go from being reactive to proactive to actually predictive. And we were able to have a newer version of that was called ComStat, and we saw crime change in this city. And I would say this today and continue to say public safety is a prerequisite to prosperity. But something was revealed during those days. I saw that our city was dysfunctional, and it still is, like all big cities across America. We create our crises. Archbishop Desmond Tutu states, we spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river. No one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. And that is how we run our cities. Our agencies are all siloed. We fight against each other. One agency creates a crisis and another agency responds to that crisis. If you just look at the Department of Education, it creates 3 crises in the city. It creates our health crises. 70% of 12-year-olds have early signs of heart disease, and it's really tied to the food that we feed our children. Under Mayor Adams, we're going to have a healthy, nutritional food system. We also feed the criminal justice crisis. 80% of the men and women at Rikers Island don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma, and almost 30%, according to one study, is dyslexic. If we had dyslexia screening in every school, we can prevent a lot of the problems we have, even early identification of learning disabilities. But we also really create our education crisis. You hear people say education is K through 12. That is just not true. Education is prenatal through career. And if we don't connect the disjointedness of our educational system, we're not going to have the right attitude on how to turn it around. And that is in all of our agencies. We must stop creating crises and prevent them and move this city forward in the right direction. So again, thank you. I look forward to answering any questions that you will have.
Thank you, Eric. We have quite a few questions.
And there's a minute to answer. I just want to stay on time, or 45 seconds.
There's 45 seconds to ask, but 2 minutes to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, brevity will never be punished. First question from Alan Ross. Alan? Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Adams. Good to see you here.
How are you? Good to see you.
My question for you is, under Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, for 10 years, we had something like 45% increase in the rent stabilization rates. The rents went up 45%. Under Bill de Blasio, they've gone up a lot less. This is a crucial issue for, what, 1 million people in New York? So I thought I should ask you about it. Are you in the tradition of Bloomberg, or are you going to be more like de Blasio? Are you going to, I'm really wanting as definite answers you can give us. I'm a lawyer, so I'm aware of some of the business that goes on with.
We're cutting off at 45 seconds. So Eric, can you, I think you got the gist of the question.
Yes, I did. And housing is so important. And I don't fall under Bloomberg or de Blasio. What's crucial for me is, number one, what I attempted to get HPD to do. We need a combination. We need preservation. We need to protect the precious affordable houses that we use, and we need to do it in real time. And I really want to convince everyone. You'll hear me use this term all the time. I wanted the HPD to put in place a system to protect those affordable units by having a red, yellow, and green model. Green means the unit is protected, there's no issues with it. Yellow is if the unit is currently in some form of legal process, and red is if they are in court. So we can ensure that we give people the necessary protections to prevent the hemorrhaging of affordable units. But then we need to think differently about affordable housing. We need to do a better job in ensuring that any developments we do is low income and middle income. United Way had a report in 2019 that stated over 40% of New Yorkers are experiencing a sufficiency deficit. Sometimes we don't realize that we're decimating our middle class, that teacher, that accountant. We need to ensure that we think differently about affordability and ensure that we look at micro units, changing the footprint size of our apartments. I'm a big believer in basement apartments. It's an opportunity to retrofit hotels that we were oversaturated previously. We must deal with this housing crisis in a real way, but we need to have a real gauge and a real-time way of monitor how many units we have in danger of losing and how are we trending towards addressing the problem of affordability.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question is from Kathy Nazari. Kathy?
Thank you. Where is it? Thanks, Eric. I think we can all agree that we need criminal justice reform. That said, how would you address the increase in violent crime that the city is experiencing?
I'm a big believer, and I am not going to move away from this. Public safety is the prerequisite to prosperity. When our city became safe in the mid-90s, we have a lot to do with our police department. Trust me, I know that, but we must be safe. Safety is the foundation of tourism, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's the foundation of families safely getting to their place of employment, our children getting to schools, and we can do that. I am a big believer. I advocated for it in the police department as I moved up through the ranks. You could have safety and justice. I would do several things right away. Number one, the mayor took part of my plan of allowing local community leaders to pick their precinct commanders. That is the most powerful position in the city of New York among civil servants. They determine and they control a 300-person team, yet you don't know who this person is. By allowing community leaders to one, interview, see the plans of what that commander is going to do in their geographical area, and then have veto power if they're not a right fit by looking at the 58 law, which was powerful. Second, I will allow my peace officers after 2 years to be promoted into the police department. They are over 80% women and people of color and South Asian, and they're 100% New Yorkers. We will change the demographics instantly. Third, we will find the money in the police department, not defund, but making police departments become more efficient. There's no reason cops sit in court for 5-6 hours when we can use WebEx and Zooms and others. We will civilianize all those units where police officers are sitting inside instead of doing the job we paid them for. We'll cut down on overtime over 400 million. We'll run a smarter police department in the process.
Thank you, Eric. Our next questioner is Robert Score.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Adams, for being here today.
Thank
I have a
you.
quick question for you. That is my standard question for all candidates. I'm the recording corresponding secretary for Local 1 of the IATSE Stagehands Union. And as mayor, I would like to know, what will you do to bring back the $15 billion financial engine that the Broadway and entertainment community is for New York City?
When I was in Albany, I was clearly part of the team of lawmakers that pushed for the tax credit so that we could stop losing many of our jobs and other venues in California and other locations. I have a clear understanding and belief that at the heart of our city is the entertainment industry. It brings tourism. It is a magnet that attracts us here. And I think there's a number of things that we should do. Number one, some of the federal stimulus should be targeted around how do we help get lights back on in Broadway, but not only Broadway, lights on in places in Williamsburg and other places where we have an entire studio industry, a movie industry, the cable industry making shows here. Blue Blood was made here. We need to pump resources to get people back on the stages, back on stage hands and back employed. I think is crucial to do so. But behind that also is that every time we get a negative report of crime in this city, it hurts our tourism and it hurts people coming here participating. Lastly, I thought during the Great Depression, we pumped in equivalent of $400 million into the arts and entertainment industry. We're going to have a real mental health crisis in the city. Studies have shown that we can use theater, arts, and culture as a way of dealing with these crises. And at the same time, we can't just remain on Broadway. It is crucial that we get Broadway into every community in the city, from Brownsville to South Jamaica, Queens to South Bronx. It can't be just for the affluent. It must be for all New Yorkers to benefit or to participate in the benefits of Broadway, but we must get lights back on.
Thank you. Perfect timing. And our next question is from Dr. Gil Horowitz.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Thank you, Richard. Question to Borough President, maybe soon to be Mayor Eric Adams. I was arrested in the Stonewall riots, so I know some LGBT folk, and I said to one, I'm liking Eric Adams as of now. And he said, oh, he's homophobic. I said, I've never heard that before. Second, he said, oh, he only likes Black people. I sure hope you also like Black folk, because they have been cheated, I'll call it, for a very long time in our city. But I think you like all people. And third, Scott Stringer is a friend of mine, but I know he's taken a lot of money from the real estate industry. Could you comment on all three?
Yes, yes. You know, one of the proudest days of my life, and if you go back and look at the video, was my speech on the Senate floor as I pushed through marriage equality and finally got that bill passed. That was extremely important for me, but also fighting for gender up in Albany, and the millions of dollars that I put in to several projects, particularly the Brooklyn Pride Center at the Armory, and other projects that we have done. I'm extremely proud of my record around LGBTQ issues, going all the way back to my policing days. We used to disrupt roll calls when I partnered with Gold to fight for the harassment where members of the LGBTQ community were being harassed by police officers. And so I'm clear on my record. I'm clear of how many times I've been honored by the LGBTQ community. You and I both know people want to define you without doing any research. Twitter is not scholarly research. And once people figure that out, we'll be a better place in New York and across America. Let me deal with the real estate issue. Real estate issue community pays 51% of our taxes. In the 70s, when we went through a financial crisis, it was the real estate industry that bailed us out. 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, we went to the real estate industry, raised taxes, did the same in 2008. They are to New York what oil is to Texas, and they must pay their fair share, and we must make sure we don't overdevelop and displace innocent people. And when you define real estate industries, I own a 4-family house. I told my tenants when they signed their lease 13, 14 years ago, I will never raise your rent while you're here. We have responsible people in real estate in this city, and we need to make sure we get through this together and not divide ourselves.
Thank you, Eric. We have just another minute or two left, and I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. The first one, getting some echo, sorry about that. First is, what is the secret skill and technique that you're going to bring to the mayor's office that's going to change the relationship between New York City and Governor Cuomo?
You know, I used to say when I would respond to a shooting or some form of robbery or serious crime, and I would run up the steps, the worst thing I can do while responding to a crisis is to dispute with my partner as we were trying to resolve it. That's what I saw here. In the first few weeks of COVID-19, I lost 5 friends. One of them was a rookie cop. The other was my mentor. And the last thing I wanted to see was my chief executives disputing with each other. We're going to sit down and say, leaders sends send a message out to their people that we will be all right. We did not see that, and I'm not going to have public disputes. I'm going to show the right tone, the right message. We will argue behind closed doors, but we will come out in front and show New Yorkers that we will work together.
Thank you. These are going to be very quick, yes or no. Taxes. Do you support the millionaire's tax?
Yes, $5 million or more, and for 2 years.
Pied-à-terre tax.
Yes, I do.
The securities transfer tax.
Yes, I do.
And the commercial vacancy tax.
I want to look at that more and get a full understanding of it, but property should not remain vacant.
Borough President Adams, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And your answers.
Thank you. Take care. Good luck to you all. Watch the snow.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Art Chang.
Hello.
Art, are you here? Good.
Yes.
Perfect.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Great. And how's the audio?
Excellent.
Good.
Excellent. So you're also named Richard Corman. I've never been quite so popular.
Well, I'm honored to be named Richard Corman as well.
So 4 minutes to begin. Thank you so much for joining us, and please begin.
Hey, terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here. My name is Art Chang. I'm running to be your next mayor. You may not have heard of me yet, but you will, because I will become the next mayor. For 40 years, I've been doing the work, not talking about the work. I've worked to improve nearly every aspect of our city, and I'll do it next from City Hall. I have 30 years of working for the public good, starting with the City Corporation Counsel's Office, Urban Development Corporation, Safe Horizon, Brooklyn Public Library, CUNY, 9 years on the Campaign Finance Board as the second Asian, the first chair of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, and then most recently as chair of the school leadership team at Brooklyn Technical High School. I also have 40 years of working in the private sector. I started off in music and then ended up in architecture and restaurants. And then after that, was working in government, followed by investment banking and venture capital. I have been a founder or co-founder in a dozen startups in New York City and have been an advisor to dozens more. The thing I'm most proud of is actually all of my mentorships, all of the people that I've mentored over the years. Some highlights. From Queens West, I learned how to build the city from the sewers to the street, to provide universal broadband, and to prepare our city for the climate crises to come. From CUNY, the Brooklyn Public Library, and Brooklyn Tech, I learned how to create an education system that meets every student where they are, from LD to specialized high schools and beyond. From Safe Horizon and Case Commons, I learned to integrate and coordinate vital government services. I co-created the only web-based technology system for state child welfare, which is now the system of record in the state of Indiana. And as a co-creator of NYC Votes, I learned how to strengthen our city's democracy using technology. What I've learned is that there's a consistency between, we can make the city much more efficient and much more effective, that we can do more with less. And all of this involves a creative look at the city's budget, the creative organization of the people of the city in conjunction with the communities that the city is trying to serve. Today, our city is standing at the edge of a precipice. We have interconnected crises, COVID, an eviction crisis, homelessness, and a lack of truly affordable housing. Our city government is top-down, siloed, not coordinated, and in conflict among itself and with Albany. And its approach to problems is broken. It's one size fits all, punitive and reactive. So I asked, can we solve today's problems with the same thinking used to create them? The city needs a different perspective and experience. Let me tell you about myself. My parents immigrated from Korea in the 1950s as students, before Asians were allowed to immigrate to this country because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. I was born in Jim Crow Atlanta. I was raised in an all-white school district in Akron, Ohio. I know what it's like to feel afraid to walk into the street because I was afraid that groups of white boys would come and they would attack me. I also know what it was like to be afraid for my mother's safety because I would go home not sure if she would be, in some cases, alive because of the domestic violence in my household. I learned not to trust the police and to fear them as much as I needed their help. There are some important lessons here.
You got to wrap up 10 more seconds, please. Sorry, that's 4 minutes.
I'm sorry, that was 4 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so my vision for City Hall is proactive and collaborative, data-driven and transparent and accountable. You asked me about Lower Manhattan. I ask, has Lower Manhattan's needs ever been placed in the context of the full city? For instance, for housing, have you ever seen a plan for the entire city that encompasses the...
Oh. Sorry, Art. We're being pretty harsh today in terms of controlling the time because we've got a long event that we've committed everyone to get them to Super Bowl. So we're going to take questions now, and our first question is from Justine Cuccia.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Justine Cuccia, and I'm going to try to talk really quickly. So my question is actually to all the candidates, but we'll start with Art. And it's about the fact that the current real estate tax system in New York City is currently forcing individual co-op and condominium owners out of their homes. And I want to know what each mayoral candidate plans to do about it. My reference is the Mayor de Blasio's New York City Advisory Commission Property Tax Reform that the commissioning was formed in May 2018. The report came out in January, I think, of 2020. My issue with the report is not the history, which was great. It was their recommendations and also their mandate, which was to maintain the maintain that there was no reduction in revenue.
Sorry, Justine. We're cutting people at 45. Art?
Okay, I'm going to be very brief on this one. There needs to be property tax parity, and there needs to be property tax parity in particular, given the strains of COVID, which has really exposed these big differences. I think when properties change hands, like single family houses, we can actually reset those property taxes to be what they should be in a more fair and equitable manner. And likewise, we should think about providing relief to co-op and condo owners on their property taxes, which have actually gone up in the time of COVID because of the assessments from last year.
Thank you, Art. Just to mention, as a courtesy, we've asked questioners to turn on their video when they ask, if they can. And our next questioner is Phil Konigsberg, a name that sounds very familiar to me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Phil?
Yes, I apologize for not having the video. Real quick for all the candidates, would you support a multiple housing smoke-free legislation that will basically say if you live in a multiple house, you have to have a smoke-free policy? 65% of the air in apartment buildings is shared. So unfortunately, if your neighbor smokes, you are forced to do the same. Thank you.
That's a super interesting question. And I just want to say I haven't thought about that issue. But it's basically everybody should deserve to have clean air. And how we come about it is a challenging question. Is it really up to the city? Is it up to the co-op board? I'm not really certain. I mean, we have limitations on smoking in public places, which certainly is the case. But especially with the growing use and prevalence of pot, this has become an increasing issue. So I would love to hear what you have to say about it and take feedback from the community on whether the city should be more forceful in its approach to this problem.
If I could just add, San Francisco, among many cities in California, have passed legislation. Unfortunately, San Francisco has a few pushback on the tobacco industry.
Thank you. We're moving on to the next question. Our next questioner is Simi Karatnaya. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Simi.
Yes, good afternoon. It's Seema Karatnaya. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. The question is, my question is, right now, children are on remote learning, and many parents are actually fighting to get their children as much off of electronic devices as possible, but the remote learning mode does not allow children to get outside of the electronic device world, unfortunately. How would you be able to solve that problem? Because parents are actually worried that the children might actually become robots, not robots, but you know, literally be stuck to the electronic devices all the time. And I have been fighting against that as a community leader and a WHO representative in terms of children mental health as well. So I would like to know your stand on.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting problem. You know, it's clear that this use of devices is going to increase the use of just devices for other things beyond just education, and there's no question. The overall picture is very, very complicated. You know, we have about 1 million students right now in public school. We have about 30% of the students have an IEP. So in other words, they're in special education. And this whole device problem is especially problematic for them. And then we have another 30,000 students in homeless shelters who are not receiving any internet, so they can't participate in school. And then we have another 10,000 or so students in juvenile detention who have a similar problem. So we have some massive issues around this and complexity around this. When the city chose to provide devices to students, it could have set up those devices to limit the types of activities that could be used on those devices, but it chose not to. And it may have been the urgency of the time, but the fact is the city had time to plan for this, and it could see that this was coming. And especially in the gap between the spring of last year and the start of school in the fall, the city could have taken some proactive steps to really remedy the situation. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Art. Our next question is from Barbara Smith.
Hi, I was just trying to unmute myself. I think I succeeded.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi. Art, and this is really for all of the candidates as well, but I wanted to get your position on the homeless situation where you have to balance local residents' rights versus those of the homeless folks. There also seems to be more aggressive panhandling in the subways. And clearly there are some serious mental health issues that aren't being, in my opinion, properly dealt with and haven't been. And what would your actions be towards a solution here? And I realize that it's not a 4-year plan, but I would just be interested in hearing your thoughts.
Right. Well, for the homelessness problem we have about 100,000 people who are homeless right now. And as you pointed out, there's a percentage of those who are mentally ill. The homelessness problem actually begins with the lack of affordable housing, especially at the lower income level. Like the city has increased its population by over 1 million people in the past 20 years, but hasn't built the number of low income houses that are needed. And then with COVID and the economic crisis, we're driving more people out of those houses and into shelters. And the shelter system is actually not set up properly. Right? We have transitional housing. We should have supportive housing. In the supportive housing arena, which is for mentally ill folks, I heard one estimate from a director of a nonprofit that we could use 10,000 additional units of supportive housing right now to deal with this issue. And so the problem is that we don't have the supply, and we need to increase it as quickly as possible, but the city isn't focused on it. What bothers me about this whole discussion is that we could have anticipated it and should have anticipated it. And there should have been a better coordination between the folks who are in housing and the folks who are in homelessness. And then we need to figure out how we address this situation and resolve it going forward. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Barbara.
Thank you, Art. Our next question from Nicholas Riccio. Nick. No, you're still muted.
Okay, sorry, it was asking me to have the host unmute me. Hi, Art. My question is just very simple. What is your opinion on the current state of the specialized high school admissions test, and how do you feel about possibly changing or keeping the system the same? Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Nicholas. So as the father of a student at Brooklyn Tech and as a former chair of the SLT there, I'll say this. The greatest city in the country deserves the greatest high schools in the country, and the specialized high schools are among those, but it's too limited. So I'm supportive of keeping the Shazat for now, but we have to greatly increase and expand the opportunities because we created this false constraint around the specialized high schools. And so there's some basic questions that I want to ask of the education system. Why don't more students go straight from high school into college courses? If you are qualified to take an AP, why aren't you taking a course at CUNY or taking an online course at Harvard? If you have an unequal skills where you are strong in English, why don't we orient toward that? Or if you're strong in math, why don't we orient toward that? We have this one size fits all, very old school mentality and approach to education that needs to be broadened so we provide more opportunities to more students. I believe that if we do that, then we may actually take away some of the demand on the specialized high school admission.
Thank you, Art. And we just have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. And what is your secret skill and technique that you're going to bring to the mayor's office to change the relationship between New York City and Governor Cuomo?
Well, I am willing to subsume my ego to his and make him shine.
Well, that might make him happy. I hope it works. Taxes. Do you support millionaire's tax?
Yes, but I also want to know what those taxes are going toward.
As mayor, I think you'd have some say in that.
That's right.
Pied-à-terre tax.
Yes.
Securities transfer tax.
No.
Commercial vacancy tax.
Yes.
What's the first thing that you would do to address the problems in NYCHA?
Data. We'd have to look at all of the situations in NYCHA and actually put them on full view in the public and actually ask the questions, why aren't we renovating those houses? Why do we have a $41 billion deferred maintenance fee? What are the other solutions that we have in addition to RAD to be able to solve these problems?
Thank you, Art. Really appreciate you joining us today. And we look forward to our continuing dialogue with you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Our next candidate is Maya Wiley. Maya, are you here?
I am here. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted.
And you are also Richard Corman, much to your chagrin, I'm sure. We need, there we go, much better. All right, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate that. And you are on for 4 minutes, and please begin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'll start with why I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City, although I am an unconventional candidate, someone who's never run for public office before and who my cat never thought I would be. And I'm running because I know and believe deeply that this can be a city where we all live with dignity. And dignity means that we are a city, one, where we all can live. And that means development without displacement. That means making sure that we have a school system that sees every last one of our children as exceptional. It means putting the public back in public safety, which is that we're safe from crime, but we're also safe from police violence. And that means we remain a city, that we're doing more than just recovering from COVID, but reimagining so that we're still a city with 800 languages spoken, that we're a place that no matter what you look like or how you worship or who you love, or whether you have a big bank account or no bank account at all, public housing or luxury housing, that it is a city for all of us. And for me, that calling to public service in this moment does stem from being the child of activists, does stem from my earliest experiences being in a segregated, overcrowded, underfunded Black public school. It does stem from watching my best friend, Charlene, disappear from my life with no explanation, finding out later that her mother, who was a grocery clerk at our neighborhood grocery store, just couldn't pay the rent when the landlord increased it. And someone who benefited from Mitchell Lama, which helped put me through law school here in New York at Columbia University. And I say all those things because I came to Columbia, came back to New York, a place where we lived on the Lower East Side when I was a baby, also in a Mitchell Lama apartment when my father was working in the civil rights movement. I came back to be a civil rights lawyer, to focus on racial justice. And, when I think about Lower Manhattan, in particular downtown Manhattan, I started my first organization after working at the ACLU and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and on every issue from access to healthcare and education funding. I founded the Center for Social Inclusion with a baby in a bouncy seat after September 11th, because a friend of mine and I had been talking for a long time about how to support community organizations to be better able to dismantle structural racism. And that is what we called it back in 2002. And what we were seeing after the crisis and horrors of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center included a lot of Islamophobia, included rounding up our residents for no other reason than their faith. But it also included the fact that $21 billion was coming in to New York City to help rebuild from the crisis. And that $21 billion was cutting out of its catchment area the Lower East Side, where I had lived as a baby, but also Chinatown. And that was exactly the kind of decision-making, exactly the kind of disinvestment that perpetuates structural racism. So we worked with groups like CAB, trying to find ways to help figure out how to better contest for appropriate rebuilding. And now in the time of COVID, where we are living with a historic crisis once again, one we will recover from. We will. We always do, whether it was the Great Recession of 2008 and all the other things we know we've recovered from. The question isn't if, it's how. And I'm running so that we recover in a way that includes all of us, rather than perpetuating the exclusions we've had for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. And our first question is from Mackenzie Pope. Mac, welcome.
Hi, thanks Maya for being here this afternoon. I just wanted to ask, as mayor, what would you do to push back against ICE?
I was very proud to fight to get the first sanctuary city legislation done in this city. And a big part of it is using the power of the mayor and of City Hall to ensure that we are not doing anything that helps ICE certainly reach any one of our residents. We also need to increase legal services for our residents, but also really utilize the power of this city to also make sure that we are lobbying our federal government to make sure that ICE isn't trying to take our people, like we just saw in the South Bronx just last week, even though Biden had a moratorium placed on it. And I would fight very hard to make sure we were protecting our residents.
Thank you, Maya. Our next question from Lucia Hartre.
Hi, thank you for being here. Currently, Mayor de Blasio has a plan to demolish East River Park and raise it 12 feet in order to protect against floods. This has been met with considerable backlash from the community. As mayor, what would your plan be for East River Park?
Look, I think that's a critically important question. And I start from a place of principle, which is one, we need whole communities, and park is an important part of having a whole community. And we also have rising sea levels. And so we must do what we can to ensure that we can hold on to that. And I am aware of the fights and the concerns. And I think working and partnering with the community to make sure we are protecting our ability to have park. And I am someone who has a $10 billion New Deal for New York, which includes a Green New Deal model for ensuring that we are more resilient in the face of climate change, and that we partner with communities on figuring out the projects that best ensure that communities are resilient and benefit from the job creation we'll create. So I would work and partner with community on the solutions.
Thank you. Our next question is from Patricia Laria. Patricia.
Okay, hi. Thank you for being here. My question is about women and minority-owned businesses. The Black community currently makes up 22% of New York City's population, yet a mere 2% of businesses are owned by Black entrepreneurs. What is your plan to help increase minority and women-owned businesses in the city as mayor?
Thank you. And I, having been the child of a mother who, after my father died, actually got government contracts to do affirmative action policies. And that's actually how she kept food on our table after he died. And look, it starts with, and I have this built into my New Deal New York $10 billion plan, that we have MWB goals attached to all that new money we're going to spend. That's critically important for how we do that. In addition, one of the things I saw during COVID, and neighbors of mine and I organized Flatbush Thrives to try to help our small neighborhood businesses in our very diverse non-white community. And we knew that the programs were going to bypass them because they weren't designed for them. And we saw firsthand that unfortunately that was true, just as we're seeing with businesses in Chinatown. So we have to do more. One of the things that SBS can do, Small Business Services, is have more set-aside programs that actually help invest in people of color-owned, women-owned businesses in low-income communities in particular, and in communities that are hard hit, that ensure they're getting the resources and support from government, not like what we just recently saw with our zip codes downtown that didn't get access to some of the grant programs that SBS created. I would change that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Janine Kiley.
Good afternoon. Would you open middle and high schools this spring for students who choose blended learning? And if so, how would you balance student and UFT needs?
So I really think it's critically important to have partnership in government, and that in a context of crisis, that partnership means leading with public health experts, making sure that the information from them is shared. I do believe that there are opportunities to do blended learning safely, and that does require making sure that our buildings and our school buildings are properly ventilated, that we have the proper testing and vaccination in particular now. It is one very deep opportunity we have if we can do it right and get those vaccines done in a way that reaches communities of need, and in working to and talking with our teachers as well as our families on what ensures that safety. But it is critically important that we make sure our children get what they need. And I do think we have an ability to do that safely.
Thank you, Maya. Our next question is from John Blasco.
Thank you. Hi, Maya. I'm John Blasco. I'm a Democratic district leader here in the Lower East Side. I understand you had you worked some years in the de Blasio administration and also worked with the CCRB. Can you tell us a bit about how you would hold the NYPD accountable that's different from those roles that you played in de Blasio's administration and CCRB? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. First, let me say, after 25 years of being a civil rights lawyer and racial justice advocate, I did go into the de Blasio administration in 2014, voted with my feet in 2016, as I say, because that yellow brick road kind of became a red brick wall. But he did appoint me to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and I was very proud because of using that seat to get Daniel Pantaleo's case over to the police department, the officer who killed Eric Garner, and saw a lot from that vantage point in terms of what's broken and what needs to be fixed. But let me just say this, and I've also set up a criminal justice initiative in South Africa back before I went to City Hall, that one of the things we have to do is put the public back in public safety. That means we have to prevent the misconduct before it happens, number one. And that means the rules of the road have to be bright and clear and dictated by the public, which for me would mean a strong mayor in combination and in consultation with city council and with communities. And that at the same time means we have to completely transform what policing is in the city and what we're investing in that shouldn't be invested in the police department because it's bloated. And so I would pull functions out of the New York City Police Department. I think we need counselors, not cops, in our schools. And I do think we need mental health services that are crisis intervention services, not policing when people have distress, and that there have to be other folks to call when we have those kinds of needs. And in terms of the accountability itself, that actually is part of strengthening the accountability, because there's been so much gray that it's been more difficult from the civilian side to hold police accountable when they have that gray. And that at the same time, we have absolute ability to require much faster discipline before anyone even has to file a complaint with a Civilian Complaint Review Board. And we have to greatly increase the powers of the Civilian Complaint Review Board and take away the police commissioner's sole discretion at determining discipline from police officers and democratize that. And I would do those things.
Thank you, Maya. I just want to remind people that I'm trying to call on people who have not asked questions first. So just to keep that in mind for those of you who've asked already. Our next question is from Jennifer Chow. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Good on me. And
Hi, thank you for being here. My question is, what is your stance on eliminating MTA fares so that it's accessible for all? And do you also support removing NYPD from train stations?
Thank you. Look, I having done transportation equity work in my past life as a racial justice advocate, it's critically important that we have affordable public transportation. Right now, our primary crisis is to make sure we're holding on to public transportation as well as expanding it to transit deserts. I was speaking to a home health aide just last week who was telling me she's got 4 buses she has to take traveling 2 hours each way, earning $15 an hour to take care of a man in a wheelchair. And as a result, she is standing in a food pantry line twice a week, even though she's working full time. And she has to come out of her own pocket for enough protective gear to do that safely. That's something that cannot stand. So we have to work to get those federal dollars into our transportation system. We absolutely have to work on the affordability of that system, and we have to ensure that we have more transit. So one of the things that we can do with our New Deal New York dollars includes some of those alternative transportation options as well. But I say that because this massive crisis means that we have to do a whole lot more to make sure that our public transportation system is the lifeblood. And on safety, this is something that I want to do as part of a transformative system. As we know, the state has been putting some police officers in transit. There's a lot we can and must do to invest in the safety of our system, but we also have to do it in a way that recognizes and investing in some of the problems that are making people feel unsafe in the subways are part of what we have to invest in. And I would eliminate street homelessness by changing the way we use our subsidies so that we do housing first and get folks supportive housing, but also, really work with leaders, because we do have to partner with Albany on what they're doing in the MTA and how we make our residents safer. And I do think that means investments.
Thank you, Maria. We have time for, I think, one or two more questions at most. Joan Strasbaugh. Joan, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I thought I did. My question is about the Board of Elections. How would you use the power of your office to help reform the New York City Board of Elections, often criticized as a source of voter disenfranchisement?
Yeah, we need major transformation at the Board of Elections. Let me just start by saying I am a proponent of ranked choice voting. I co-chaired the campaign to bring it because I believe it is the right thing to do for democracy. Love the public match program that we have, thanks to City Council, because it also is helpful. But BOE is a mess. And frankly, there's a lot of good legislation. I'm very grateful for Senator Myrie for helping us with early voting, but there are several really important pro-democracy proposals that are in Albany right now, and they're formally part of my Albany agenda. And one of them certainly has to be reforming the BOE. We need to make sure that it is that we are adequately supported with voter education poll workers. We need to have instant voter registration. We need to ensure that we are doing everything in our power to support the education of our people on ranked choice voting, which is something that has started, in my view, later than it should, and that we're doing as a campaign to try to bring it. We are going to have to work with Albany to get them done, because it is Albany that controls it. But I'm really, really happy that we've had a delegation that has brought a raft of reforms to Albany, and I will be fighting alongside them to get those raft of reforms done.
Thank you, Maya. One more question from Joseph Reaver.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hi, Maya. My question is one that's based locally but reflective of a citywide issue, and has to do with Elizabeth Street Garden, which is a community garden that's been pitted against affordable housing and is at risk of being destroyed. What is your position on using the alternative site that would use 388 Hudson, which is a gravel-filled city-owned lot and could provide up to 5 times the amount of the proposed development, instead of destroying Elizabeth Street Garden, which is a heavily used community garden and has hundreds of free public programs and run by volunteers?
Thank you, and I'm aware of the some of what has happened with the dispute around the Elizabeth Garden, and I'm a big believer in public space and that we need them in every community. I also believe that we have an affordable housing crisis that has become a humanitarian crisis. It is a big driver of homelessness. It is one of the reasons why we have an eviction crisis. And in our senior housing, we're watching folks age into poverty in this city, not just in this city, but in this city. So look, I can't speak to the alternative site. I definitely am going to prioritize affordable housing. And it's one of the things that we have done in our New Deal New York plan, is to ensure that we also have resources for doing capital construction that solves community problems. And we can partner with communities on finding what those are. And that does include open space. So I'm hoping we can find more alternatives for open space.
Thank you. And just a couple of quick questions to round it out, some that we've asked others. So your secret skill and technique in improving the awful relationship between the mayor's office and Governor Cuomo?
Well, this is something I have some experience with from my days in City Hall,
Thought you
watching
might.
watching the tremendous mistakes. And one of the mistakes I'll speak to is a missed opportunity to partner. And I was able to do this with women and minority-owned businesses around legislation we needed changed in Albany in order for the city to be able to get more contracts to MWBEs. And so we created a table and we created the partnerships and priorities with our delegation to Albany before we went up there as city government to ask for what we wanted. And actually the MWBEs themselves asked first, and we already had teed up our strategies in partnership with some of our state electeds who cared very deeply about MWBE and were in committee positions that could help us move the legislation. That partnership model was not the norm when I was at City Hall. And you know what? We got the legislation done. And so a big part of it is actually working in partnership both with impacted communities and leaders, as well as our delegation around what our priorities for Albany are and how best to accomplish them and who goes in first. Sometimes it should be the mayor's office, depending on the strategy. Sometimes it should be our electeds. Sometimes it should be advocates themselves who go in first. But unless you have the relationships and the strategies organized and teed up, you can't work in alignment and coalition very effectively. And I would do that in the front end, not just have a fight.
Does sound better. Thank you, Maya. We appreciate you joining us today. And we look forward to this continuing dialogue as we go into the election.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And please stay safe and stay well.
Thank you. I am going to turn the moderating role over to my partner today, Chancito. Give me a moment's break. And our next candidate is Sean Donovan. So Chung, you're up.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks for an amazing job so far. And thank you for all the candidates for being here. It's actually a great day to be on the forum since it's snowing outside. So as Richard said, the next candidate is Sean Donovan. Sean?
Hey, Chung, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Should I jump right in?
Yeah, so right now you have 4 minutes for your part, for your comments, and then we'll take questions.
Great. Thanks so much. And wonderful to be with you all on this second snowy day in a week. As Chung said, good day to be indoors, hanging out with each other on Zoom. Look, I believe that I am a unique candidate in this race. As I hope you'll hear, I have deep, deep experience in leading through crisis. And that experience gives me the ability to get big, bold ideas done as your mayor. That experience began because I grew up in a different time of crisis in this city, in Manhattan. As a child, I saw homelessness exploding on our streets. I saw neighborhoods across this city crumbling, some literally burning to the ground. And it lit a fire in me to go to work on behalf of this city that I love. I started volunteering in a homeless shelter in college. And when I finished, I came straight back to the city to start working at a nonprofit, rebuilding those very same neighborhoods I'd seen burning as a kid. That began a 30-year career on the front lines of housing and homelessness, of racial and economic justice, culminating in all 8 years in the Obama administration. And as I said, in those 30 years, I've learned what it takes to lead through crisis. And I've learned what it takes to work with grassroots organizations, community leaders in downtown Manhattan. I was housing commissioner in the city in the wake of 9/11 and helped to make sure that Lower Manhattan came back stronger, safer, more affordable than it'd been before the crisis. When the worst housing crisis of our lifetimes hit this city and this country, President Obama asked me to lead our housing recovery. And I went to work protecting and rebuilding the wealth that had been destroyed, particularly in Black and brown communities. And then when Sandy hit our shores and there was the threat of a lifetime, President Obama asked me to go to work rebuilding safer and stronger and smarter by leading the entire federal recovery effort. And I went to work side by side with leaders like Damaris Reyes at good old Lower East Side, bringing together architects and the best designers from around the world, the best scientists, to partner with the community groups on the Lower East Side to get Rebuild by Design done and to begin a process that invested hundreds of millions of dollars that unfortunately has taken Mayor de Blasio far too long to turn into reality and safety for folks in Lower Manhattan. As if no good deed goes unpunished, President Obama then asked me to lead the entire $4 trillion federal budget. And just a few weeks later, Ebola hit. And I was in the Situation Room side by side with Dr. Fauci, our military leaders, President Obama, Vice President Biden, making sure that an emerging global health threat didn't become a pandemic that cost tens of thousands of New Yorkers their lives. Through all of that, I've learned what it means to lead through crisis. And I remember through each of those, something that President Obama used to say to us all the time, that we cannot let a crisis go to waste. And so in this moment, we must have a mayor who has the ideas, the leadership to repair and rebuild this city. But we also need a mayor that understands that we must reimagine this as a city that works for everyone. That's the mayor I would be. That's the public servant that I've been throughout my entire career. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you in downtown Manhattan to make sure that this city is a city that works for everyone. So thank you, Chung, for having me. Thank you all. Look forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you, Sean. The first question goes to, I'm going to hope I say it right, Valentina Jones.
Yes, you said it right. My question is, thank you. My question.
I think you're on mute.
Okay. My question is about congestion pricing. This was done before COVID, and since COVID, I don't know that it's congested below 60th Street, and we've had problems with businesses below 60th Street. So I don't know that additional cost to bring food supplies and merchandise to businesses below 60th Street would be a good thing. The other question I have is that, as you brought it up, in terms of how would you work with the health department in terms of better public health messaging and communicating with the public? The health department went from saying that you do not need to wear a mask if you are not sick to now you need to wear 2 masks or special masks or et cetera. So how would you work with the health department in terms of public messaging? Thank you.
Well, like so many things, Valentina, in this race, too often what you hear from politicians is rhetoric. For me, this is reality. You don't have to take my word for it. I sat side by side with Dr. Fauci and all of our other medical leaders through Ebola, through Zika. I understand that you have to let health professionals lead, and that as important as the message itself is the trust in the messenger. And I think the problem we had here in New York City is that too often it was political leaders rather than health leaders that were speaking to the public. Too often that eroded the trust that we felt in the messages that were coming. Too often we got conflicting messages. And to me, the single best example of that was when Mayor de Blasio took away contact testing and tracing from his health department because his health commissioner had told him the truth about how much more aggressive he needed to be. And instead of listening, instead of surrounding himself with people who would tell him the truth, he took contact tracing and testing away and gave it to the Health and Hospitals Corporation, further confusing New Yorkers and muddling the message. That's not the kind of leadership that we need. I'm the only one in this race who has the deep experience in crisis, including health crisis, to know how to lead and to work with the health department. On your question about congestion pricing, I do believe that if implemented well, congestion pricing can be effective for the city. I do think that our congestion will come back. We know that between Uber and Lyft and other ride shares, our congestion had gone up 30 to 40% in New York City before the pandemic hit. But here's what we need to do. First of all, we need to make investments in transit as we are implementing congestion pricing so that we're not putting many, many riders at a disadvantage.
Sorry about that, Sean. We have the rules of 2-minute response. So hopefully we'll get to that. Maybe another question. Next is Trevor Holland. Trevor?
Hi, Sean. Nice to see you again, and thank you for attending this pre-Super Bowl party that we're all spending time at. But quick question for you. It's actually for all candidates, and it's not actually going to have to do with resiliency or rezoning, but if you had 3 executive orders that could go unchallenged, what would they be on your first day of office?
Trevor, it's great to see you too. As I said in my announcement speech, one of those 3 would absolutely be to establish for the first time in the history of the city, a chief equity officer reporting directly to me. That has never been done in this city and would set the tone and make sure that we're driving equity through everything. As I said, equity, we need a mayor who understands that every issue is an issue of equity. So that's one. Second, I would establish a cross-agency council that would start implementing my idea for 15-minute neighborhoods. Now, many New Yorkers, particularly those who live in wealthier neighborhoods, understand what a 15-minute neighborhood is, but far too many New Yorkers don't have within 15 minutes of their door a great public school, access to good transit. They don't have the healthcare, mental health care, primary care that they need, access to a good park where they can exercise. We've seen in this pandemic what that means, and access to fresh food. All of those would be part of this council that I established to make sure that we're driving planning in this city in a more equitable, community-oriented way. And then the last would be to establish what I call my equity bonds program. This builds on the work that has been done by Cory Booker, Senator from New Jersey, the baby bonds work. This would build on that by making sure that every child born in this city would get $1,000 when they were born. And each year, depending on income until they graduate high school, another up to $2,000 per year. This means that a child born in poverty in New York City, regardless of immigration status, regardless of what they look like, where they live, what language they speak, they would be able to graduate high school with almost $50,000 in an account to put to work for college, to start a business, to be able to make sure that we had real opportunity in this city that broke down the racial disparities that we have right now. Those are the 3 things I would do.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Theo Chino. Theo, you on?
Yes, hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey, Theo,
Sean.
good to see you.
Good to see you. My name is Theo Chino. I am the co-founder of Show the Book, which is a legacy. And I wanted to talk about your legacy as HPD commissioner. Several of HPD high-end commissioner have been jailed because of corruption, using the HPD stock and being put in jail over $2.5 million of bribe. 135 empty units in the hand of HPD are still empty from the time you were a commissioner. About 300 TPT housing program building are going in foreclosure 10 years later because a lot of nonprofit corporation have been scavenging and taking the equity out of those buildings. Well,
Theo, I'm sorry, but
No,
we
the
have
question I
set up
was simply,
rules.
should he run on the Republican ticket instead of being a Democrat? And what will you do if you get elected? Thank you.
Well, Theo, as a lifelong Democrat who's been committed, as I said in my opening statement, to solving the problems of housing and homelessness, of racial injustice in this city, there's no way I'd run as a Democrat in this race. I'm a lifelong, as a Republican, I'm a lifelong Democrat who was proud to serve all 8 years in President Obama's cabinet. I'm also deeply proud of my record of service, that there has been extremely limited corruption or other problems like the ones that you're talking about during my time, both as HPD commissioner and as well as HUD secretary. In fact, if you ask the Department of Investigation, during my 5 years as HPD commissioner, we worked extremely closely together. We were able to actually catch elected officials and others who were trying to undermine the integrity of our programs. And I have never been directly accused of any kind of malfeasance or any kind of corruption in the programs that I've run. And that was after we inherited a department that had become deeply corrupt under Rudy Giuliani. And so I'm proud of that record.
Thank you, Sean. I'm going to make sure that everyone gets a chance who has not asked a question. Barry Skolnick.
I think you're on mute, Barry.
Barry, yeah, unmute.
The statement of 2021.
Okay. Hi.
There you are.
Unfortunately, I'm about to ask another HPD question. During your 5 years there was a record of a lot of projects, housing projects started, but I don't remember there being a record of a lot of housing projects that were completed. Could you go into some detail about how you improved the housing, the completion of housing projects during your 5 years there? And would that be what you would say is an example of your leadership that you could show would continue as mayor?
Absolutely, Barry, and I'm glad you asked that question. I will say, as we all know in this city, that it takes time. If you work with a community, if you really develop housing in partnership, it takes time. And we dramatically accelerated the construction of housing. In fact, you may remember that when I came in, there was a 65,000 unit housing plan. We turned it into a 165,000 unit housing plan. So we did accelerate dramatically the affordable housing that was getting built around the city. And there are many projects that I'm proud of. Even going back to my early days, right when I got out of school, I started working with South Bronx churches, East Brooklyn congregations, leaders around the city to make sure that we were building homeownership that built Black and brown wealth. And Nehemiah Spring Creek is a very good example of a project like that I completed with them. But I think probably the one I'm proudest of is where I announced my campaign. It's called Via Verde. And we engaged with a deep conversation with the local community board, local leaders. What we heard is they wanted housing that was the healthiest affordable housing in the city, if not in the country. We ran a worldwide design competition to get the best architects, the best landscape architects to partner with us. And we built a housing that is not only deeply affordable, mixes senior and family units. It has a health clinic on the ground floor. It has an amazing playground and courtyard. And perhaps most remarkable, it has cascading rooftops in the project that are all planted with vegetable gardens and fruit trees that the young people growing up there harvest every day and serve on their dinner tables. Via Verde is an example of what we could do everywhere. When Ruben Diaz Jr. was there at the ribbon cutting with me, he said, "Let it be known that where the Bronx was once burning, we are now building gardens in the sky." Those are the kind of affordable housing developments that we can do as if I were mayor, that absolutely engage communities and build not just affordable housing, but healthy, sustainable housing as well.
Thank you, Sean. Next, we have Tommy Lowe.
Thank you.
Hey, Tommy, I can hear you.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
You sounded like you're somewhat familiar with the East River Park plan and the Lower East Side Resiliency Plan. Well, as you know then, that the community spent several years designing a plan, only to have the city come in, throw that plan away, and come up with a budget that was twice as much. We've been asking since then to get hold of why that happened, and secondly, to have independent consultants come in and look at the city's plan before they go in, destroy an entire park, 1,000 trees, and level everything in the park. What would you do as mayor?
Well, Tommy, as HUD secretary, I led the development of the plan that you were supportive of. And the fundamental problem here is that we have a mayor and an administration that doesn't engage effectively with communities. I believe because we had engaged good old Lower East Side and so many other neighborhood organizations, we had a plan that truly represented what the community wanted. As you said, preserving the park and making sure that we protected every part of the neighborhood that the park sat next to. And that was a plan that came out of deep community engagement, partnership with the best designers in the world. And that's something that honestly is part of the reason why I'm running, because at the federal level, I was able to start that effort. We left hundreds of millions of dollars to the city to be able to implement that plan. And then from everything I know, working with Rebuild by Design and Amy Chester, what we saw was the city went into a black hole, didn't communicate with community members, and moved away from that plan without ever consulting in any real way the community. That has to change. For my whole career, I've been working with communities. I like to say revitalization has to be something that happens with and for communities, not to communities. And so I would have stuck with the old plan, and I would have implemented it much, much quicker to protect you and all your neighbors from the next storm, which could be imminent.
Thank you. I'm just going to have a few questions to wrap up. Sean, who's your second choice for mayor in the ranked choice voting?
I would have to say, Chung, that I would probably pick Maya as my second choice. I have a lot of respect for the work that she's done on civil rights and fair housing. As you may know, I led that work for President Obama, so much so that when Donald Trump still had a Twitter account, he was attacking my work by saying it would have destroyed the suburb, racist tweets, because I was on the forefront of making sure Black and brown folks could live wherever they choose. And I've admired Maya's work there for many years.
Great. Just two questions, yes or no. Do you support commercial rent control?
In the right circumstances, yes.
And how about legalization of marijuana?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Sean, for participating and sharing your afternoon with us.
It's great to see you again. And thank you for all you did to feed so many in Chinatown and in Lower Manhattan. It was a pleasure to work with you on Common Table and all the work we've done at Rethink. So it's great to see you. Big elbow bump to all of you.
Thank you. And next, we will hear from Ray McGuire.
Chung, let me just interrupt for a second and announce again that our next speaker was scheduled to be Andrew Young. For those who came on late, Andrew.
No, Ray is next. Richard.
No, I know
next.
that. I know that. I'm just saying that he is not feeling well, and so he's not joining us today. Not feeling well because of COVID.
Yes, we wish him well and recover soon. Is Richard? Is Ray? Is your?
Yeah, I was waiting for the host to unmute me and to let me in.
Sorry. Oh, sorry about that.
I have my video.
So here we are.
Is my video working? I'm still. Can you see me now?
Yes,
Hello, Chung Sito. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me. And thank you to all at the Lower Manhattan Coalition and all the clubs and organizations that have come together to host this forum, and to the honorable district leaders and all the elected officials. I'm honored to spend time with you on what is clearly a snowy afternoon. So I hope the city services are doing all they can to keep safe and the streets well maintained, as they clearly would under the McGuire administration. So I'm happy to join you to talk a little bit about myself and my vision for New York City, and especially Lower Manhattan, where I've spent a lot of time.
Okay, Ray, you have 4 minutes for your statement, and then we'll take questions.
Sure, thank you. Listen, I think some of you know who I am, but just as a refresher, I come from the other side of the tracks in Dayton, Ohio. I was raised by my single mother, who, along with my grandparents, raised me and my 2 brothers. I didn't know my father. At any one point in time, we had half a dozen or so foster children in our home. And through my mother's sacrifices, my mother was a social worker, and through her sacrifices, I was able to leave home at 16 and search around New England for schools. And I landed at a school in Connecticut, and then I went on to college, law school, and business school at Harvard. And I came to New York City with 3 things. I had a great education, I had a lot of debt, and I had no money. And this city's been great to me. And so it is where I met my wife and where we were raising our 3 children, Leo, who is 8, Ella, who is 18, and our son, Cole, who was drafted in the first round of the NBA draft and now is the starting point guard for the Orlando Magic. So we're proud about what we've been able to accomplish in this city. But today, this city is, as you know, going through at least 3 existential crises, and I would say 4. It's a crisis of COVID. It's a crisis of the economy. It's the crisis of the racial and religious segregation. And it's the existential crisis which we've yet to deal with, is a 100-year flood that comes every 5 years, and we've yet to deal with that. And so what is my plan? My plan is to lead the greatest comeback and most inclusive and necessary comeback to preserve and grow this city. That's the economic comeback. Today, we're facing the most severe economic crisis in this city's history. The devastation caused by COVID, with years of systemic inequities about which I've written, in education, in the economy, in healthcare, and in the criminal justice system, has put this city today, it's put us at a dangerous crossroads. The budget deficit is large and it's growing. And my unparalleled success with managing budgets means that I know the steps that are necessary to require our city, to the economy to come back. We got to review all the inefficiencies and costs, and we need to appropriately increase taxes on those who can afford it, including people who have been as fortunate as me. But we can neither tax nor cut our way out of this worsening crisis. The only way to come back, the only way is to grow. And so my plan is to have immediate financial support for our struggling small businesses. They are critical. They employ half of the workforce in New York City. I want to streamline permits. I want to deal with the inspections, which have gotten out of hand. I want to have the approvals to help businesses open and reopen quickly. I want to give a wage subsidy to 50,000 small businesses so that they can make certain that they can pay their employees. And that wage subsidy will be for 50% of the wages for a year. I also want to have those small businesses be able to keep their tax sales receipts. I want to wage a major infrastructure program that's intended to create jobs, rebuilding the roads and the bridges and in essential infrastructure that are going to be necessary to manage the next environmental crisis. I want to fix the subway elevators. I want to make sure that we build truly affordable housing. And I also want to make our city much more sustainable than it's ever has been. I want to work with the unions to make sure that we get good wages and benefits. And I also want to target job training. All too many of our New Yorkers are not trained. Too many of them don't graduate from high school. And we need to have New Yorkers trained for the jobs of today, but also trained for the jobs of the future. And I also want to make sure that we have affordable childcare for all New Yorkers, which will grow into jobs in early childhood education and help the parents remain in the workforce. And all of these programs I intend to kick off in my first 100 days. And so my economic plan You can look at it on my site, go rayformayor.com. And what's included in that economic plan is relatively straightforward. It's an ambitious vision, but we need this kind of ambitious vision. And what I say to people is I can underwrite a vision like this because I didn't get termed out. I'm not looking for a promotion. I quit my job. I quit my job so that I could do this for the city that I love.
Great, thank you for that. Again, we're trying to stick to the rules and limit the time. We'll start with some questions now, and the first one will be Jim Forat. Jim? Is Jim on mute?
You unmuted the wrong person.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim, you're unmuted. It must be his audio. Move on. I think we should move.
Okay, so we'll move on. Next, Lynn Ellsworth.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My question really is about education. I see from your own life history how crucial education was to your own professional trajectory. So I'm kind of wondering, no candidate has yet come forward to say that, you know, our New York City public school system should be the best world-class public school system we've got. I see too many schools that are crowded, that the maintenance is appalling and almost embarrassing, and classrooms where the kids aren't even taught phonics. So how does education fit into economic development for New York City?
Ray?
I'm sorry, I keep getting muted and unmuted. The answer is education is essential. If you look at my vision for New York, it includes the following three pillars: the economy, and I've touched on that briefly, safety, security, and quality of life, and education. Education is personal to me. It is what got me from the other side of the tracks in Dayton, Ohio to New York City. And my plan for education is what I call cradle to career, because you're absolutely right. The system today is not educating our children. And my cradle to career is pre-K is fine, but what we know is that by the time any of our children start at pre-K, they're already behind. So I want to go from 0 to 4, making certain that we have affordable childcare for all. And then I want to make certain that by the end of the 3rd grade, every child in New York City can read and do math. And I want that to be for my account, because what we know is between 0 and the end of the 3rd grade, our children are learning to read. After that, they're reading to learn. If they never learn to read, we don't have the system to remediate. And then I want to make sure that we expose our kid beginning in the 6th grade so they can have careers. They can be molders, they can be welders, they can be coders, they can be programmers. And then I want to make certain that they have summer jobs, public-private partnerships, so that by the time they graduate, they can choose to go into one of those professions in a career or job, or they can go to a 2 or 4 year college. That's how I intend to invest. And I also want to make certain that the principals in each one of these schools have the resources necessary to educate our children. And right now they do not. That is at the highest level of prioritization for me. So thank you for asking that question. It's essential to who I am and essential to my vision for New York.
Great, so thank you for that, Ray. We're going to go back to Jim. Jim, can you hear us? Jim, we're coming back to you. Okay, so we're moving on. Next, we have Janine Kiley.
Hello. I think she's muted.
Yes.
You said you support truly affordable housing. Do you have a more effective alternative to MIH? And how would you then address NYCHA's problems as well?
So the answer is I do as part of my Go Big strategy, infrastructure includes truly affordable housing. We used to build, at the height of building, 2.2 units of housing for every new job. Today, that's 0.5. And rarely is it affordable. And affordable, by description of affordable, is those people who make $15,000 to $30,000 a year shouldn't pay 50 to 60% of their income in rent. So we have to develop truly affordable housing, and that is going to be a primary part of my infrastructure plan. NYCHA, we need to make sure that we focus on NYCHA. It is now bloated infrastructure. I was yesterday in the Bronx in 2 to 3 different NYCHA facilities visiting these homes. And last week I was also in the Bronx visiting NYCHA homes. These homes, the conditions are deplorable. If you get an elevator to work, you got to make certain that it goes to the right floor. You go into some of these apartments that have open tickets. People have been allocated $3 million or so to fix what's taking place there a year ago, still haven't gotten their apartments fixed. We have many of our New York citizens living in deplorable conditions. That would be the highest priority. We need to get people, we have a right to shelter. We have a moral obligation. We need to make sure that we fix NYCHA, and that has got to be one of the highest priorities. 600,000 people at least, and we need to dedicate all of our resources to making sure that these people can live with dignity, with the right roof over their head, and get these these open tickets closed, because right now very little is taking place.
Thank you, Ray. We're going to try Jim one more time before we move on. Jim, do we have you?
Same issue. It must be his audio.
Okay. Sorry, Jim. We're going to keep moving along. Next is Kathy Nazari.
Hi, Kathy.
Yep, you're on. We can hear you.
Hi, Ray. Nice to see you. My sister works at City and has the nicest things to say about you.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thanks. We all agree that we need criminal justice reform, but how would you address the rise in violence that we've seen over the last few months?
You know, that comes down to how I think about the culture of the police, and then how I would manage this. One, I do not believe in the narrative of defund. I think that's divisive. I believe in restructure, reallocate. And I believe the police need to have a culture of what I call RAP. They need to be respectful, accountable, and proportionate. We need to return the respect between the community and the police, which today has been breached. And we need to hold those police who are serial abusers, for whom we pay $200 million a year. We need to hold them accountable, and we need to have some demonstrable evidence of having held them accountable, so that the community believes that the police are there for them. And for those people who don't uphold the oaths, they get dealt with. And number 3 is we need to be proportionate. It has been said that if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. In many Black and brown communities, it's a sledgehammer. And so we need to make certain that we reallocate dollars to get them into the mental health care professionals, to get them into the community organizers, to get them into the violence interrupters. And we need to make certain that we give these children summer jobs, because I had a summer job. It kept me out of trouble. If we give these kids summer jobs, give them something to do in community centers, which is invest in these community centers and return to community policing. Officer Nunez used to say, Ray, you know, you can continue to do what you're going to do, or I'm going to call your mother. And we knew that Officer Nunez was there, and others like him, to make certain that that relationship between the community and the police existed. So it's RAP, R-A-P, reallocate the dollars to make sure we get them into the mental health care professionals, the community-based people who can deal with this, including the violence interrupters. That's the way we begin to deal with this. Give people hope. No job, no dignity, no dignity. It turns into the social challenges that we now have. That could be me. And I want to make certain we address those. I want to make sure that these kids have the same opportunity that I had to get a job, to get an education, to get a job, so they don't have to become part of that system where we're criminalizing poverty. Let's move forward and we can attack this. That's how I think about it.
Thank you, Ray. Right now, I have a few questions and a few lightning round questions for you.
Sure.
So one is, who's your second choice for mayor in your ranked choice voting?
I continue to review that. This is like having someone about whom you care so deeply. You need to make certain that if you transition, that someone is there to do that. And I'm going through evaluating who I think is best positioned to do that. There are very few people who have the leadership, the proven leadership and business skills that I do, which is going to be what's needed to get us out of this economic crisis. So I'm thinking through who has that and who has the relationships to make certain we have the business, the private public sector relationships and the private sector partnerships, which are going to be absolutely vital to getting jobs and reviving this economy. So I've yet to decide on that.
Okay. And how would you integrate public schools?
That's a bit of a myth. It's mathematically not possible given percentages, given the racial percentages here. I would make certain that I took the best public schools into each of these neighborhoods. And I get back to my education plan. This gets to making certain that we empower and give resources to the principals in these high schools. Make certain that educational success and societal success through education is not determined by the zip code. So I would invest in the local education, take the education to the students, make certain that in each one of these zip codes that we have the highest quality education. If it comes through integration, through some facet of integration, I'm all for that. I'm focused on making certain that we deliver quality education to the children where they are. Let's meet the children where they are and give them the best.
Great. And just some yes or no questions and answers. So do you support city control of the MTA?
If we could afford it, yes, if we could afford it.
Okay. Do you support a millionaire's tax?
As part of an overall plan, we're all going to have to do more, but it has to be in the context of making certain that we grow our way out of the budget. Remember, we can neither tax nor cut our way out of this. We have to grow our way out of this, and those who can afford it will be prepared to pay for it for so long as we give them the right quality of life, which today has been breached and we need to restore it.
So that's a yes.
That would be yes.
Okay. And then finally, do you support legalization of marijuana?
Yes.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you for your time today, Ray. And you could, plan your Super Bowl party.
Thank you very much. I thought this was it. Thank you very much. So appreciate you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ray. And next, we have, again, for those joining us, the next candidate would have been Andrew Yang, and we all know he's still recovering from COVID, and so we send our best wishes. And so we bring Diane Morales. Diane? Do we have Diane? Diane,
Chung, I don't think we've located Diane.
Nope.
We're working on it.
Okay. Is Scott available?
Also trying to get him to come ASAP.
Sue, can you tell us if there's any other of the candidates available right now, or?
And not that I see, but it just give us a second and we are working on it. Thank you.
No problem. So we'll just take a minute break, try to get these candidates.
Hi.
I think we might have Diane Morales.
Yes, hi. I'm so sorry about that. I was
okay.
And so I apologize.
Diane, whenever you're ready, we have 4 minutes for you make statements, and then we'll start with questions after that.
Great. Sorry, I just transitioned to my earpods. My apologies. Just give me one quick second to make sure that I can. Yes. Great. I'm so sorry for the mix-up and the confusion. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane Morales. I've had over 25 years of experience meeting the needs of New Yorkers when our systems have failed. New York City is a part of who I am. I'm from here, I've taught here, I raised my family here, and I've organized right here in this city. Throughout all of this, I've experienced the failed systems of our city, but also the hope of our communities. And it's that combination that led me to enter this race. But over the past year, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded the pre-existing pandemics of racism and poverty that already plagued so many New Yorkers. And as we watched Wall Street and the stock market got stronger, while our already weak systems created an even deeper inequity within our schools, our health facilities, and our neighborhoods. The problem isn't money. Our city has the resources. The problem is our priorities, how administration after administration, out of touch with our communities, has continued to fail to address the root causes of the barriers to a dignified life. The next mayor has to have a clear vision in defending and protecting human rights, the rights of Black and Brown communities, and all other marginalized communities. This means protecting the livelihood of all New Yorkers. We need a new paradigm that will prioritize communities most in need, stabilize the livelihoods of our neighbors, and radicalize our approach to addressing the needs of the majority of New Yorkers. I'm a first-generation Puerto Rican born and raised in Bed-Stuy to a working class family. I'm also the single mother of 2 children who has been a successful executive and leader of human service organizations dedicated to helping others navigate challenges and access opportunity to live in dignity. I've co-founded a national organization. I've successfully created education enrichment programs to counter equity issues that has been replicated across the city. And I've launched a career training program in healthcare. I look forward to being here with all of you this afternoon and sharing my vision for the city that has been inspired by the people, with the people, and for the people. I'm not here to get us back to the status quo. I'm running for mayor because I believe that we can co-create an equitable city that we have never experienced, but that we all deserve. One that finally lives up to the rhetoric of being the greatest city in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. First question we have is Tom Legata.
Hi, Diane. I have one broad question. Sorry, I got my light in the background. Every direction is terrible here with the moment. The broad question is about your views on community-based zoning, community-led zoning, with the specific nuance of, do you support pausing and revising the city's Soho NoHo plan? Do you endorse the Chinatown Working Group plan for Chinatown and the Lower East Side? And what's your position on the city's top-down blueprint plan?
My answer to this question is kind of at the core of my platform and my campaign. I believe that we should be centering communities and New Yorkers in every decision and in every policy that the city undertakes. And so, I really think that in terms of the Soho NoHo thing, we should be pausing it. We need to, the zoning process, the ULURP process, it's all broken. We need to fundamentally recreate how we do this. And communities should have not just a seat at the table, but actually a leading voice and decision-making in the processes around decision-making for those communities and around how all of these things are going to impact them. And so that is how I would approach all zoning. and all sort of changes to land use or anything else that happens in our communities. We need to really ensure that our city, that our communities in the city have a leadership voice in decision making. I hope that addressed your question.
Thank you for that. Next, again, so Diane, I think we are putting 2 minutes to responses and 45 seconds for questions. Next,
Gotcha.
we have Scott Kaplan.
Yes, Diana.
Hi, Scott.
Hi. John Lindsay said being mayor was the second hardest job in America. How do you avoid repeating what journalist Jack Newfield said of the progressive icon? John Lindsay wanted to do good, but he didn't know how.
That's a great question. So, I've spent my entire career actually doing good, not just wanting to do it, but actually being very effective in getting it done. And that, I think, is a function of leadership, executive skills, and management. It is the ability to make sure that everyone understands the role that they play, both in co-creating the vision for execution for a better New York City, and the role that they specifically play in helping to make that possible and making that a reality, so that everybody feels valued and everyone understands the importance of their role in making, the vision of goodness for all New Yorkers possible. I have done that effectively at every organization that I have led, moving from, leading hundreds of people and getting everybody to work together towards a shared vision and to feel valued in that process. So I believe I can do that. I have done it effectively in the past and can continue to do that as mayor of New York City.
Thank you. Next, we're going to call on Daisy Paez. District Leader Daisy Paez.
Hi, Diana. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Daisy.
I have a question. I live on the Lower East Side and we're like overcrowded here. My question is, the AMI is based on the so-called affordable housing, with all these new developments. I live on the Lower East Side, and I can tell you that a huge percentage of the residents here, especially the lifelong residents, do not fit the criteria of the AMI, which is based on the entire metropolitan area. I'm going to keep reading my question if I can. Okay, based on the immediate area, which these new high rises especially are taking space in our community with these developers who offer a certain amount of apartments for tax breaks. Can the AMI be changed to be fixed in the immediate area in which these new developers are being offered?
Yes, not only can it be changed, it can be, we can get rid of it. We can abolish it. We can actually move towards a whole different structure of how we do housing in New York City that does not prioritize and center developers and their profit, but instead prioritize and centers the communities that need housing. The housing market, the way we do it in New York City right now, it's speculative and commodifies housing and makes it such that we feel like we have to rely on these large scale developers in order to build housing. That's not the only way we can do it. We can make choices to do things differently insofar as the housing market and so many other things in New York City, so that the people that are benefiting are actually the people that need it the most. So I am a strong supporter of the idea of moving away from that model and adopting a whole different framework for developing housing in our city.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Carmen Cruz.
My phone was ringing as you called my name. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Carmen. We hear you.
Everyone speaks about the education of children and what to do with children, okay, which I'm for. But no one talks about educating parents, setting up like family resource centers in each of the schools that will provide child rearing classes, you know, even how to use a dictionary so that they can help their child. How the Department of Education actually operates. Like a lot of these parents don't even know why it is that you must have a 12.0 reading level when you graduate. They don't know what a reading, how do you call reading grade level or math level is. So.
Okay. Can we, Carmen, sorry about that. We have 45 seconds allotted for the asking of the question. Can we just allow her just to ask the question? If you could do it in 10 seconds. Okay.
Okay,
Diane.
So the question is, what do you think about that? What is your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I can tell you that for many, many years, I have actually spearheaded and run programs to help educate our parents and our families around a whole variety of things, how to navigate the school system, their own adult literacy efforts, how to advocate for themselves and their children in the school system. It is possible to do it. I don't know, we can do that in schools, but we can also engage community-based organizations to help in providing those services and those supports. And I have been lucky enough to do both. In my last job, I actually led a lot of community schools, which are partnerships with community-based organizations and schools at the Department of Education. I think that model could also be expanded on and done better. But I think there's absolutely a way and a need for us to do what you're talking about, because our parents need to be empowered and understand what their children are dealing with and navigating.
Great, thanks, Diane. Next, Harriet Hirschhorn.
Oh, there we go.
Harriet,
Hi, my is sort of twofold. It's sort of a follow-up to Daisy Paez's question in the sense that it concerns both housing and also our health on the Lower East Side. I'm concerned about the ESCR, and that's the quote-unquote resiliency plan for the East River. And sometimes I wonder whether or not it's a development plan in sheep's clothing, or resiliency clothing, because the old plan was hilly and this new plan is flat, possibly paving the way for potential building, which my fear is that it will lead to displacement of particularly people who live along that waterfront. So I wonder about that. The other
Is there, yeah, please, you have to try to get your question in under 45 seconds. Was there a question in there? Are we gonna?
The question, considering the potential dangerousness of the ESCR, would you consider it being paused and reviewed by a panel of experts, meanwhile providing interim flood protection for our neighborhoods?
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I understand that there has been a lot of community concern about the plans. And I would like to actually see a process where community members felt really, really included in the process and felt like they were part of the solution. Absolutely, I think that we need to be, investing in green infrastructure and resiliency and prioritizing the communities in terms of building flood barriers and flood plans. But I also think that we can do it in a way that engages community, respects community, and prioritizes the community. So that is definitely something that I would be in support of.
Great, thank you. Next is Taylor Banning. Taylor.
I see you.
Hi.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, Diane Morales. Thank you.
Hi.
Nearly 80,000 New Yorkers are without housing. Every night, nearly 20,000 people sleep outside or in public spaces. Being homeless increases the risk of COVID and complications from COVID. and homelessness disproportionately impacts Black and Brown New Yorkers. As mayor, what are you going to do to ensure all New Yorkers have secure, safe, respectful homes and services? And will you keep a city level voucher? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. At the homelessness forum earlier or last week, I went on the record as saying that I believe that New York City right now lacks the moral and the political will to actually provide housing for everyone. I think that we actually have the ability to do that. We can take over vacant spaces. We can purchase and take over hotel rooms. We can be flexible in zoning of vacant spaces, newly vacant spaces in particular, like commercial spaces. And we could and should actually prioritize getting everyone housing right now. We can't separate the public health crisis from the housing crisis because we can't keep people healthy if they don't have a roof over their heads. And that is critical. I also think we need to move away from the shelter system and move towards a system that provides permanent housing for all. And so, those are two things that I have been loudly advocating for, and I've committed to actually beginning to address that in the first 100 days of my administration.
Terrific. Last question we'll get from John Blasco.
Hi, Diane. Good to see you.
Hi, John. Good to see you too.
So many candidates are talking about, we need to fix NYCHA. We need to fix NYCHA. It's horrible. But no one has really told me as a NYCHA resident how they're going to fix NYCHA. So would you just share a little bit about your vision for NYCHA and improving it? Thank you.
Sure. Great. Thank you for that question. So I am an advocate and a strong supporter of the Green New Deal for NYCHA. I think that once we reallocate our budget and take things out of things like policing and bring more resources into the community, we can begin to move towards the Green New Deal in terms of employing NYCHA residents to help with issues of retrofitting and building the green infrastructure and addressing all of the, beginning to address the outstanding repairs for NYCHA. I also am a big supporter of Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez's bill in terms of beginning to bring resources to NYCHA to address that. And the last thing I'll say on this is I think we need to move towards democratizing NYCHA and giving residents much more power and control over what is happening in their developments so that they have, that they can feel like they're engaged in decision making and can begin to exercise the pride that we all want to have in our homes. So those are things that I would begin to move on immediately.
Thank you for that, Diane. I'm just going to ask you a few questions as I have other candidates.
Sure.
First is, who's your second choice for mayor in your ranked choice voting?
That's a good question. I get asked that a lot. I think that it's time for us to have change in the city. I think we need a person of color, and I think my preference would be a woman. I think women are better leaders in general. No offense, guys. But I haven't quite figured out who my number two would be yet. I'm kind of taking some time to see if we can push some folks further to the left before I commit to that.
Okay, and some yes or no questions.
Okay.
Do you support city control of the MTA?
Only if we get the revenue to go with it.
So that's a yes.
Yes, with the revenue.
Do you support commercial rent control?
Yes.
And do you support a millionaire's tax?
Absolutely.
Great. And with that, we have come to the end of yours questions. So thank you so much for participating today.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And then right now, I am going to toss it back to my partner, Richard, for next series of candidates.
Thank you, Chung. I appreciate that. The break is good. I think you'll enjoy it. And our next candidate is Scott Stringer. Scott, are you on?
I am on, sir.
Great. Thank you for joining us. And in case you didn't hear, we're doing 4 minutes for an opening statement for you, and then questions of 45 seconds with a 2-minute answer. And at the end, we'll have a few questions, kind of lightning round for you. So, please bear with us if we mute, because we're going to be pretty strict on time. So Scott, welcome and thanks for coming.
Richard, thank you, and Chung, thank you. And it really is great to be here with so many friends at all the downtown clubs. It's great that everybody could be together. I wish it was in person, but I'm really glad to be able to talk directly to all of you. And let me just say that it is critical that community-based organizations and advocates have a discussion about how we can best bring our city back to life. And look, I could start, I guess, at the beginning, pre-COVID. This city had a 3.4% unemployment rate in February of 2020. And over the last 10 years, we added 970,000 jobs to the economy. And when COVID hit in March, that unemployment rate went from 3.4% to over 20%. And in communities of color, it was much higher. And among young people, it was off the charts. Those 970,000 jobs, we lost 900,000 in 30 days. This was not like the Great Recession in 2008. This was not post-Hurricane Sandy. This was not the 1970s fiscal crisis. This was akin to the Great Depression, where we literally saw food lines, bread lines, people dying, people losing jobs and careers, not being able to pay rent. A city that voluntarily shut down its entire economy. There was no precedent for what we were going through. And in order to bring this city back, we're going to need a mayor who has the vision and the skills to make sure that we can tackle an economy that must be rebuilt differently. We must be willing and able to tackle the health disparities in our city. And we have to speak directly about the social justice challenges we face. The future of the city depends on being a place where people can afford to live. We cannot be a city where the entrance fee is a $2 million condo. So we need to build real affordable housing. Let me say this, let's call it low-income housing for the people who are struggling in our city. But we have to continue the value proposition, and that includes great schools and great parks. It really means bringing our city back so that every neighborhood has a real resiliency plan, and that we can create a climate change agenda, the likes we've never seen. And talk is cheap. You know, I've detailed the plans. I have a small business plan that talks about the tax breaks local businesses are going to need. We have to address the hollowed out commercial corridors. We have to help small businesses with their online business, because this is going to be a slow road, folks, when it comes to helping our businesses. We've lost 2,800 businesses. We've lost 520,000 jobs in this sector. And I want to talk about workforce development and free tuition at the 2-year CUNY schools so that we can upskill our workforce. And we need to have a specific plan on how to build low-income housing. I mean, you just can't say, I'm going to build low-income housing. You got to tell the voters how you're going to do it, not just why. And I also think we need a transportation infrastructure plan, and I have a 21st century transportation plan that I believe is real. The mayor may not be able to control the MTA, but we got the streets, and we have to reimagine our city post-pandemic. But let me just say this, plans aren't enough. It's going to take government and political skills to get things done. And quite frankly, no one in this race matches my experience. As a former assemblyman, no one's going to steal my lunch money in Albany. I've been an assembly reformer. I challenged the political power structure, and I led the fight on so many critical issues in Albany. I worked with all of you as borough president. We worked on community-based planning. We grew the tax base while protecting communities. And that's the experience I'm going to bring to the mayor's office. As controller, I manage the $240 billion pension fund. It's the 4th largest pension fund in America. And this pension fund has been able, under my leadership, not just to take care of our retirees, but also to divest from the private prison industrial complex. I just divested $4 billion in fossil fuels, which is a historic divestment. And I've also been the auditor in chief. I've held the de Blasio administration accountable for 7 years.
Scott, apologies. We're holding people to 4 minutes. And we are now ready to begin questions. You're back online. So our first question is from Maggie Boyd. Maggie?
Hi, I read your candidate survey and you said, I will create a new system for entrance into our specialized high schools that are based on state math and reading tests instead of the SHSAT and potentially apportion some seats to top scorers within school districts or individual schools. How do you think that that's going to help to desegregate the schools? And the second part of my question is, do you believe in mandatory gifted testing?
Well, I think that we have to make some tough decisions when it comes to diversity in our schools, and we should start with our specialized schools. Too many Black and brown kids, almost all Black and brown kids, can't get into the school system because the Shazat is not allowing people to access the schools. So let's change the test. Let's swap out the Shazat, in my opinion, for the 7th grade test, which is more about what's learned in the classroom. I believe we'd see more diversity in the specialized schools. And then when it comes to integration in this city, we also have to model what's happening in the Brooklyn District 15 and on the Upper West Side and District 3 to start integrating our schools so that every kid can get the advantage of the diversity that thrives within the school system when it's done right. Many of you know I have 2 little kids. You know, we live downtown and my kids go to public school in Chelsea, and I want them to have every opportunity to learn. They're actually in the gifted and talented program right now, and I know how resourced that program can be. But we have got to acknowledge that every kid has to have access to these programs. And while I want what's best for my kids, I also want to make sure as mayor that I'm doing right by all the children. And that's why we have to continue to think about better integration and resources for all children, regardless of race, zip code. And that's what I hope to accomplish.
Thank you, Scott. Our next question is from Justine Kutcha.
Thanks so much. Sorry. So hi, Scott. Justine here, and I'm going to try to do this quickly. I wanted to focus on the disparity between class 1 and class 2 income housing and the tax rates all throughout Manhattan. And I wanted to know, I'm asking you and I wanted to ask all candidates, what are people going to do to think outside the box? Because what is being proposed by the commission of the mayor, it's not tenable. The people on this call cannot stay in their homes. This is condo and co-op owners. So now I'm switching the dialogue from low income to middle and whatever income. We own our homes. We can't stay here because the taxes are increasing at a crazy rate. And I don't want the pain to be pushed to class 1 homes. I want us to figure out someplace else to get the revenue. What are your ideas?
You know, it's unfortunate that the city council mayor real property commission has just simply died on the vine, where we haven't been able to have a rational, serious discussion about how we think more equally about the 4 classes. Basically, we have not thought out of the box. I agree with you, Justine. Basically, it's a system of winners and losers. And that's not the way we should design this system. People should know that of the candidates running for office as mayor, I actually have real experience in real property taxation, not just because I've audited the Department of Finance, but I also served in the Assembly as chair of the Real Property Taxation Committee. And during the $1 billion tax assessor scandal, it was left to the work I did to hold hearings and pass complicated legislation to make sure that never happened again. Your commitment that I will give you is we're going to revive the commission. We're going to take it on the road. We're going to get input. And we have to create a system where there's not winners and losers, but that we create a fair system that works for everybody. Condo co-op owners, small property owners. There is a system that needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Our next question is from Michael Marino. Michael?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Hi. Hi, Michael.
I wanted to ask you about I think every candidate today has been asked a question by somebody about the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project. And I'm sure, as you're aware, the whole east side of our island from Chelsea down to, from 23rd Street down to Brooklyn Bridge and Wall Street is under some sort of plan for redevelopment or flood mitigation. And there's just been a lot of, I think, mistrust of the plan by the community based on sort of what we are and are not being told by the city. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what your stance is on these various plans and what your view is on supporting or not supporting them.
Well, you know that as the former borough president of Manhattan, for me, community engagement is the way we bring together different interests to fashion a plan. And for too long, when it comes to rezonings or these kind of big ideas, the de Blasio administration has not engaged community. That is true up and down the borough. That's true throughout New York City. We have 520 miles of coastline. We need to have a plan to protect each one of our communities. Community engagement is key. One size fits all doesn't work. And I want to just say to everybody who's approached me on this issue, you know, I'm the controller, not the borough president, so we haven't been able to work together on this issue. But as mayor, I will work to protect our shoreline, open space. We're going to engage the community every which way. As my climate proposals show, I believe in a fossil-free infrastructure in the city. That will happen the day I take office. My work during the time of divestment is also my work in times of investment. I've invested in the green economy. I believe that we have to have a community-based resiliency plan that meets the needs of everybody. And that is my commitment to everyone, both in Lower Manhattan, in the East River Park proposal, but also around the city.
Thank you, Scott. Our next question is from Jim Farrat. Jim, let's give you another shot here.
I've unmuted. Oh.
Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you very much, Scott, for your clear vision. But I want to talk about some of the things which people don't bring up so far. I'd like your opinion about guaranteed income. I'd like your opinion about how in the hell you can muzzle or deal with the head of the police union. And I know you are a union supporter, but there's something has to be done about what he does with his members. How do we recruit and qualify police officers? It seems that they're slipping through the holes here. We even had one of them down in the insurgent in the Capitol. So could you address those kinds of emotional taboo questions rather than the brilliance of your policy suggestions?
All right, well, firstly, on guaranteed income, I believe that we are going to have a massive stimulus package. We're certainly going to need to have a revenue stream that's going to guarantee that we cancel people's rent, that we give them the help that they need. That should come from the federal government. Obviously, in New York City, I don't simply think that giving people $1,000 or $1,500, dollars a year, $5 a day, should be the economic infrastructure plan we need to bring our poorest citizens to a safe space and a safe network. It's going to be a combination of programs. Many I'm talking about now as mayor. There's more to come. In terms of the police union, let me say this. This mayor has lost control of the police department. I'm going to appoint a police commissioner that is aligned with my thinking and my agenda. I just issued a very specific 40-page plan on how I would deal with police discipline, how I would restructure the NYPD. I will have zero tolerance for the police union that is about bullying, not solving problems. And as soon as I put out my policing plan, the first thing that happened was the police union went after it. No surprise. I don't care. We're going to build a police department that has one standard of justice for policing. We're going to redirect resources to invest in social workers and programs that keep kids away from the criminal justice system. And we're going to keep the city safe. Make no mistake, but not every safety agenda is about a gun and a badge. And that is how we've looked at policing. I know that we can do better. It's pretty amazing to me that in Eugene, Oregon, they answered 24,000 calls for people who are having mental health issues. You know what they did? They sent out mental health experts and guidance counselors and interrupters from their city agencies. Out of the 24,000 calls, Jim, 150 police interventions was needed. Why are we leading on these innovative ways to keep kids away from interaction with police, getting police to do what they should be doing, and then building out an incredibly new way of addressing mental health issues, and creating a new environment for people to prosper?
Thank you, Scott. Our next and last question, I think, is from Pete Davies. Pete?
Yep, thank you. Hello, Mr. Stringer. Where do you stand on the current legislation introduced by Speaker Johnson to amend the city charter intro 2186 that will create a top-down procedure for land use decisions throughout New York City, an entirely new autocratic process that will eliminate deference to the local New York City Council member and also severely limit and minimize grassroots community input?
You know, as borough president, I know what community-based planning is all about, and I would continue to engage. I haven't really looked at that closely to the council plan, but I could tell you that we do need to engage community. As somebody who basically changed the way community boards were appointed, a merit-based system that created new community boards, helping with land use and zoning issues. Many of you know that in Lower Manhattan and throughout the borough. I will continue to build on that. We do have to think out of the box by coming up with comprehensive citywide planning, but that has to engage community stakeholders. And that is something I'm committed to.
Are you paying attention to the Soho community alternative?
One question, sorry, Pete. So Scott, let me ask you a couple of questions. One that I've asked others before. How would you go about changing the relationship between the New York City and Governor Cuomo?
Look, this is where experience matters. You know, I, as a former assembly member, where I was one of the most independent, reform-minded legislators in modern history, I ended empty seat voting. I worked very hard to bring a new generation of elected officials like Senator Ramos, Assembly Member, Senator Jessica Ramos, Senator Julio Salazar, Senator Myrie. I stood with them because we had too many Republicans, Democrats who acted like Republicans. I fought for them to get elected as a way of changing Albany. We won, we did. That's why we passed the strongest rent protection laws ever. And I'm gonna work with them, and I'm gonna build a different relationship with Governor Cuomo. I'm gonna make sure that the legislative agenda that the city has is real and strong. And I have the hands-on experience, both as a reformer, but somebody who was able to pass very important pieces of legislation during my tenure. I'm a former chair of the Cities Committee in Albany, the Real Property Taxation Committee in Albany. And look, the challenge for the next mayor is to hit the ground on day one. And I believe that I have the day one experience to walk into City Hall, craft an Albany agenda, tackle the budget issues, tackle the health issues, tackle the economy. And that is why I think we can truly make a difference, because I can bring the best and the brightest into government and make these changes.
So these questions should be short answers. Do you support legalization of marijuana?
Yes, and I did the analysis that showed that the city could realize $355 million from new revenue. I don't think that revenue should only go to the general fund, however. I think we have to create equity in the neighborhoods where over-policing on marijuana, sending fathers and mothers to jail for decades, has to be made right. And part of the legalization of marijuana has to be about making sure we have investment in communities. We certainly don't want to turn this part of the economy over to the people who will only get richer. We want to redirect that money. And that is what I've worked on, crunching the numbers as controller to see what works and what doesn't.
You support the millionaire's tax?
Yes.
The pied-à-terre tax?
Look, the taxes that you mentioned, pied-à-terre and all of them, I think everything should be on the table as revenue enhancers. I do think we have to work with our Albany partners, our Democrats in the state Senate, and craft a program that works. So for example, I support specifically an increase in the payroll taxes for the 5% of the largest companies, because I want to work to create a program called NYC Under 3 that would triple the number of childcare slots for kids and end the childcare deserts. We know that 0 to 3 learning, 80% of brain development occurs in those ages. We want to build a childcare system that allows people to return to work. 20,000 women under my plan, mostly women, would be back into the workforce. That's a tax worth having to create the childcare programs we support. And by the way, I'm working
Scott,
with Senator Ramos to do that.
Yeah, these are supposed to be yes and no answers, but
Sorry,
that's you've
I'm
got a
doing
lot to say.
it's hard.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Scott.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
Richard. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Our next candidate is Catherine Garcia. Catherine, are you here?
I am here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. We have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone who stayed on for, I know, a long Zoom afternoon pre the Super Bowl. But as you know, I have been accountable to the 8.6 million New Yorkers for the last 14 years. And if you didn't know my name, I was the one who delivered your drinking water so you could brush your teeth, kept the harbors clean when I was at DEP. And at sanitation, if I was still there, I'd be plowing your snow and ensuring that your trash and recycling got picked up. And I have to say, I've been very proud of the force so far this winter season. And at NYCHA, I put in place the first compliance office to really drive change in that organization. I have been called on to serve in every crisis. During Sandy, I was the incident commander at DEP. During COVID, building a food program literally over a weekend that ended up delivering 130 million meals to people who were sick or couldn't get out of their houses because they were vulnerable. My vision for New York is one where every family can have the same experience I did, which is great public schools, a stable housing situation, and where you can really dream no matter which zip code you come from, whether or not that's you want to be in fashion or music or finance or food, that you have the ability to take on whatever it is you want to. And I am running for mayor because we cannot afford another politician who does not understand how the city really delivers services and has the experience to get that done. The role of mayor over the coming years is going to be to rebuild this city and heal us together. We have to provide the necessary support to get that done, and the day-to-day quality and quality of life investments. And what I mean by that is safe transit, clean streets, clean parks, access to fresh, healthy food, reliable childcare that allow all New Yorkers to thrive. And that is why the core of my COVID recovery plan is to support the most vulnerable New Yorkers with free childcare for those who make less than $70,000, a real connection between CUNY and both the public and private sector, as well as using and leveraging our trade and vocational high schools. There are very good union jobs that should be available to those kids coming out of high school, but we need to make sure we're creating a pipeline to career for all of our youth. And one of the things we clearly have seen during COVID is the imperative of universal broadband. We couldn't be having this meeting today if all of you didn't have strong Wi-Fi. That has to be made available to every New Yorker, regardless of income level, because you can't excel at work, you can't excel at school without having access to the internet. And I believe, honestly, that government should be somewhat invisible. Like, we should do our jobs humbly and not without the expectation of praise. If we're doing it right, you shouldn't notice us. And government is about improving everyone's life no matter where they are in the city of New York. And that's what I intend to deliver and what I have delivered over the last 14 years. So that is why I'm running for mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Thank you, Catherine. Our first question is going to be from David Sifford.
Thanks, Richard. I'm sorry I couldn't raise my hand. I'm a host. They don't let me raise. But
you're jumping in front of the class.
I did send a message.
I gave him permission.
When you were commissioner of the Department of Sanitation, the department let a lease expire on a parking lot that resulted in a lot of garbage trucks being parked around Lower Manhattan, especially in poor neighborhoods in Lower Manhattan, in the East Village and the Lower East Side, including in front of people's houses, in front of a nonprofit community theater. And when we tried to talk to the department, they were not interested in talking to us. They did not treat us with even a lick of respect. And it was a pretty painful experience for a lot of us in Lower Manhattan. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to come here and sort of explain what happened, since I don't want to jump to conclusions without hearing from you.
And I was the evil empire. I appreciate the opportunity. And no, we didn't let the lease expire. We tried to keep and hang on to that building. And we really just got evicted. We were technically homeless. We were homeless. We were a homeless garage, and there was no place to go. And then we scrambled to find additional sites, actually working with Council Member Rivera, that we ended up parking up near the heliport and renting spaces up there for the trucks up near the heliport. But I had suggested that we continue squatting in the building we had for Manhattan 6 on the west side, and I was told that I could probably get myself arrested for that. And so we were really forced to be using those spots on the street and trying to come up with a better solution for them long-term. And long-term has always been the plan for a new garage for both Manhattan 6 and Manhattan 8. And I will work hard to make that happen, because the garage on the west side at Canal Street is beautiful, extremely efficient for us from an operational point of view, and has no impact on the community. They actually have embraced it at this point in time. And having facilities that work for the department and work for the community is what I would like to see put in place.
Thank you, Catherine. Our next question is from Michael Kramer. Michael?
Hi, Catherine. How would you use your leadership experience inside city government to bring the city back sooner and/or better than your rivals in 2022?
Thank you. And that is really where I think my experience will shine. I know how to get things moving in city government, and all of the steps and trip hazards that are out there, whether or not that is procurement or hiring or making strategic investments. And we are going to need to make some strategic investments, particularly, I think, around culture and the restaurant world. They are the heart and soul of who we are as New Yorkers, and we need to help them get back on their feet, because that also brings back everything else. You could put an office tower in New York City, you can put an office tower in Akron, Ohio. You can't put Broadway anywhere. You can't put the opera anywhere, and you can't put the arts anywhere. And when we support that, and we support all of those jobs, that will help us. But we also need to make strategic investments in our climate change infrastructure, because it's not going away with the pandemic. And that creates real opportunities for construction jobs. We need to be counter-cyclical.
Thank you, Catherine. Jenny Lowe. Jenny, I saw your hand up before and got taken down. Do you have a question? Jenny, are you here?
Yes, I do. I don't know why it was taken down. That happened to me numerous times. But hi, Catherine. It's so good to see you here. I wanted to ask a question about the COVID vaccine. The rollout process was really not good. Community of color, people with language barrier and lack of internet access had no way of getting appointments and they still are having difficulty. What would you have done if it was Mayor Garcia?
No, I appreciate that question. I put out a vaccine plan and actually told the mayor's office they should just copy it because this is where you require planning. You knew that a vaccine was coming. The whole world was working on it. We were going to get one. You could have defined who goes first, who is essential. The second piece is they managed to design a program that only if you are very tech savvy and relatively wealthy can you figure out how to use it. And so in my plan, the pre-planning would have been involving nonprofit and faith-based organizations to identify our most vulnerable and bring the vaccine to them so that they would be able to enroll through their nonprofits, particularly if they had a tech or a language barrier. But we also need to make sure that we are delivering vaccines directly to people's door. There are a lot of people who are disabled or who can't get out and stand in line, particularly in the cold. And the funny thing is, for people who have home care, we know where they are. There could be routes already underway for ensuring that they and their caregivers got the vaccine. The rollout has been a sham. I would have made 25% of the vaccine reserved to be used through nonprofits. I would have used all of our schools to make sure that it's not further than a local walk for anyone. And I would have made it so that there was a mobile option as well. And one of the things I would say right now is eventually it will get to everyone. And we don't have the infrastructure yet for everyone and how everyone will get access. And we also don't know whether or not we're going to need boosters annually like the flu shot. We should be planning for that right now.
Thank you, Catherine. Next question is from Christopher Marte. Chris?
Hi. Currently, the Department of Education funds their schools through a projection model that's based on enrollment, and typically this works. However, this year schools are under enrolled because of the pandemic, and some schools owe up to $600,000. We shouldn't be making schools pay back these funds. Parents, education activists, and leaders are calling the DOE and mayor to create an amnesty program, similar to the amnesty program created after the financial crisis. Will you support parents in calling for this amnesty so our schools could keep their funds?
Absolutely. And let me tell you, I'm hearing about this directly because my sister is a public school teacher and her school is incredibly worried about having to give back funds when they've spent those funds because they needed extra teachers. It's an elementary school. Many of them are back in the building, plus they are having to do the online portion of it. This actually requires more resources, not less. And so taking away what they have now would just be tragic. But I'll tell you, my biggest concern is that those kids are sort of lost through the cracks right now, and that they haven't enrolled because they are completely disengaged from school. I'm hopeful that they've just moved somewhere else, but I think that's not the case. I'm very concerned that they're just completely disengaged.
Thank you, Catherine. Next question is from Mary Pearson. Mary?
Okay. Hi. Yes, thank you for taking my question. I've heard that it's a COVID question. I've heard 40% of healthcare workers have refused to take the vaccine.
Yes.
Errol Lewis said on New York One, here's the vaccination line, here's the unemployment line, choose. Are you in favor of mandatory vaccines in nursing homes and for other healthcare workers?
I am in favor of mandatory vaccines. We have to make sure we are protecting our most vulnerable, particularly if you think about who's in a hospital or a nursing home. It's people who are older or they have underlying conditions, or perhaps they have cancer. They're very vulnerable. And we need to make sure that the people who care for them are able to protect them. But it's concerning. And one of the things we need to do more work on is this vaccine resistance that we're seeing across the nation. And it's about education, and it's about education from trusted people in their lives, whether or not that's a faith leader or a community organization or a medical professional. But we need to make sure that the vaccine is getting into arms.
Thank you, Catherine. And Michelle Campo.
Hi,
Michelle?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
I don't see you, but I can
Good.
hear you.
Can you see me? Not yet. Okay. My question to you is that many times the community has been put through the ringer in terms of something coming up and community involvement and Soho NoHo in particular and the East River Resiliency Project. And then this is overturned by our mayor, just, wiped away, as he did with a lot of the community board involvement. And I want to know how you feel about that and what's your input on that. And the second question is, I'm not finished, is that I want to know if you are going to accept funding from real estate interests and developers for your campaign and in your mayoral.
Okay, so I mean, I actually think that community involvement is absolutely critical in how we are doing land use and how we really move forward. And, I have publicly stated that I have been in support of the Soho NoHo rezoning because I know that we have not built enough in this city. We added 500,000 people and only 100,000 units of housing. Those are the future homes for folks. And I think it's incredibly important that this city keep building and growing so that we have jobs and homes for people in the future. COVID will give us some opportunities to do conversions, but we know that we have been in a housing crunch since before I was born, and we will continue to be unless we can build additional units and also legalize things like basement apartments and accessory dwellings. I have taken money from real estate. I believe that everyone has to be at the table for us to be able to come back and rebuild, whether or not you're in the private sector, the public sector, the nonprofit sector, the philanthropic sector. We're going to need everybody's talents to get out of this and to bring New York back stronger than ever.
Thank you, Catherine. Tammy Meltzer, I saw your hand up earlier. Do you have a question? Tammy? There's your hands back up. Tammy, you should go. You were in line next.
Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you so much.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great forum so far. I wanted to ask in specific, the Department of Sanitation is one of those departments that definitely makes plans and has a lot of structure in it, but not a lot of community input by a long shot. And one of the conversations you keep saying is bringing everybody to the table. Where do you see the role of the community in this? We've heard a lot of community, but particularly with this mayor, it's very top down with an economic driven recovery plans only done through real estate development. What other forms of community engagement, and by that I mean more than notification and more really true engagement, and what type of other economic drivers do you think need to be added for the recovery?
So I mean, the recovery is going to be, I think, much broader than just real estate. I do think investment, and not just real estate, but also infrastructure investment is critical to that. As we move forward, you need to make sure you're putting in water mains, putting in sewers, and continuing to build out that infrastructure. But I would also say that, how communities are involved in that is often through their community boards and participation in those forums. But I certainly have done other forums with communities regarding sanitation work and meeting with them and going out and doing town halls as we move forward. And I've brought people to the table. The commercial waste zone legislation that passed, we had REBNY and the Environmental Justice Alliance and the New Yorkers for the Public Interest, as well as the Teamsters, as well as the partnership, all at the table, all talking about how did we craft something that would really work for everyone. I've been able to do that before very effectively, and I look forward to doing it when I'm mayor.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me ask you a couple of questions. How would you change the relationship between New York City and Governor Cuomo?
Oh, the first thing I'd say is we actually have to remember that we need a strategy both for Governor Cuomo as well as for our state legislature. They actually have a lot of power over New York City. They can preempt almost anything the council does. And working with them rather than opposed to them is incredibly important. But I am really straightforward and professional about my relationships with anyone. We can agree to disagree, but we don't have to do that in a way that is personal. And I believe that folks in the state want the best for New York City. It's in their best interest for us to thrive, because as the city goes, so goes the state.
Is there any topic that's really important to you that you don't think has been covered by the forums that you've attended?
I do feel like climate change is the most important threat that we face moving forward long term. And ensuring that we're doing things like electrifying school buses and protecting our children's lungs and their brain development, building out a renewable Rikers so that we have composting and we have batteries and we have solar and we have wind. These are all going to be critical investments moving forward. But also, we know that local law 97 needs to be implemented. Creating a financial scheme to assist buildings make these conversions and ditch fossil fuels. City has to be a partner with them as we move forward.
Catherine, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time and spending it today. And we've had some scheduling disruption, but I hope we have our next candidate up. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really do appreciate it, Richard. It's been lovely being able to be a part of it.
Yes, thank you. And team, do we have our next candidate ready? Don't go anywhere, Catherine. You never know. We might come back to you.
We have a mystery Richard Corman that we hope is our next candidate.
Don't be asking me these questions. You might not like the answers.
Carlos, are you with us, Carlos?
We are sorry for the delay. Again, the issue is that at the last minute, Andrew Yang was not feeling well due to COVID, and so he felt he had to not come today.
We seem to have lost our mystery Richard as well.
Have we gotten in touch with Lori Sutton?
Yes, she's set for 5:10, though she couldn't do earlier.
Well, while we're still searching around, I want to do something I didn't get to do before, which is thank my team, the team at DID that put so much work into this and who you hear searching around for the candidates. Sue Burke, Sue Wave, thanks so much for everything you've done here. Meg Pascarella, Meg, thank you. Really appreciate all the work. David Weiss, the bad guy with the timer. And one of the guys who, one of our team who put a lot into this but couldn't join us today because of the snow or the expected snow, he was at work at 5:30 this morning supporting the Commissioner of Sanitation in their communications efforts. Joshua Goodman. So Josh, wherever you are, thanks for your help. And have we found any more Richard Cormans? We have to figure out how that happened, why they all came on as me.
I think it was your link. I think that for some reason, the link you created was attached with your name. And so it just
Richard,
got
is it
viral.
possible- I'm sorry, is it possible to do a shout out about county committee while we're here?
Sure, great idea. So county committee is, I like to call it the roots of the grassroots of the Democratic Party. It is really the first step in getting involved and being a representative of your community. You really rep your block. You are, as a county committee member, there to support the people in your very local neighborhood, in your election district, and communicate to them and back from them to the Democratic Party. County committee, we in DID are about to embark on a county committee recruitment effort. We're going to be texting all Democratic voters below 14th Street, and to find people who are interested in really getting involved and participating in this very, very important part of our democracy. And we will distribute the people who are interested to the clubs that from where they reside. So we're working this effort in conjunction with all of our partner clubs here.
Richard, we have Carlos. I just need to find him and unmute him.
Wonderful. Nobody came here on Super Bowl Sunday to listen to me. Chung, do you want to take this?
Sure, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm still.
I think we are on. Is this right?
Yes,
Can you all
we
hear
can
me?
hear you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Carlos. Take a deep breath. We have blocked off 4 minutes for you to make your statement, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. And I know that there is so much happening today and that you are all safe and healthy and warm. I'm Carlos Menchaca. I'm a city council member, and I am running for mayor. My first time running for office was in 2013. I rode my bike around Red Hook right after Sandy, saw the devastation, and really connected to the incredible need that I saw in the neighborhood.
Did we just lose Carlos?
He got muted, but he should be unmuted now.
Carlos, we apologize for that.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm back?
Yes, you're back. Sorry.
Okay, beautiful. So I just wanted to say that I ran for office in 2013. I ran against an incumbent and won through incredible organizing in the community. Really saw some incredible need and got to work. We passed the IDNYC bill that has brought over 1 million people an identification card. That incredible coalition of New Yorkers really taught me the power of voice. Through participatory budgeting, we have brought over $20+ million into the community where they can make decisions about how to improve their neighborhood. And I've been a critic of this mayor since day one in city council. That experience has given me the sense of understanding about what we need in this city. We are in another crisis. This pandemic and the economy that is restructuring is also fueled by the racial justice conversations that we're having with yet no one in the leadership of this city to actually meet that challenge. I have voted against the jails. I have voted against the budget. I will continue to fight for these issues in the city council. And this budget that we're all anticipating will be on the ballot. And I want to be your representative. I think the power of our communities and our neighborhoods are what's going to get us out, not just of the pandemic, but out of what we have all been seeing and feeling in terms of the police and incarcerating and neglecting our communities impacted by COVID. So I'll take any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. We have our first question from Alice Blank.
Hello, Alice.
Trying to unmute Alice.
Thank you, Chung, for your patience. I know this is it's technology and it's what it is, but thank you for.
There's just a lot of participants, and so we're just trying to find Alice and unmute. Should I move on, David?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute her. I don't know if she sees that she can unmute, but Alice, if you can see it, we're asking you to unmute and you unmute yourself then. So why don't we come back?
Okay, so let's move ahead and Jerry Carter. Jerry has not asked yet, so we're gonna have him ask first.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Jerry Carter. Thank you so much. I got one question. What is your policy on the blueprint plan?
What is my policy on the, what was that?
The blueprint for NYCHA. Blueprint plan for NYCHA.
Yes. Okay, so there are a few things that I think are really important to talk about. The future plans. I was just at Fulton Houses yesterday talking to the residents. I do not support RAD. Mainly because not only do residents say no, the civic engagement process is not there for any big ideas. What we need to do is fully fund NYCHA. There are $32 billion of deferred maintenance that we need to fund right now. One of my big plans is to bring a Green New Deal to the city of New York through the city capital funding to put in a down payment in the first 4 years and really push the state and the federal government to fund. But if we don't do it at the city level, how is the state or the federal government going to know that we're serious about protecting public housing? I represent Red Hook East and West, and there's a lot there that's happening, both from the FEMA project that's brought in over $500 million of resiliency infrastructure that's outside the building, but nothing inside the building in apartments. That's where we need to focus. Inside quality of life for our residents.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank
Alice, should we give Alice another chance to unmute?
Her audio is down. I'll see if I can let you know when it's back up.
Okay, then Scott Kaplan.
Scott.
Yes, hi, Carlos.
Hi, Scott. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. My question is, could you address published reports that your staff has experienced high turnover, and also that you terminated a few council staff members right before Christmas in 2018? And if that's true, what does that have to say about how you would perform if you're mayor? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you for that question. And it's no doubt that the work that the council has is incredibly difficult, challenging, lots of hours. And what I want is better pay and better salaries for our staff. I think there are two things that are important. I can't really talk about the HR components, but I think to that report you should go back and read it again. But I think what's really important about this is that I demand the best from everybody, and the team that I have assembled today is incredible. And I thank everybody who puts their time and effort into this work, whether it's at the city council or anywhere else in public service, that they get honored for that work. And the timing, it was the timing. This is where we landed. We did everything we could on the process, and so there's nothing more to say than that. Thank you for asking a question, but I think that I'm going to continue to demand the best of everyone, and period. Thank you.
Carlos. Next, we have Theo Chino.
Theo.
Hi, Carlos.
Hi.
This is Theo. How are you?
Hey, good to see you again.
Likewise. Well, I just wanted to publicly ask my question regarding the bill regarding the more transparency on HPD, because I want to show you that there is quite a lot of support for someone to introduce the transparency bill that I was talking to you and I talked to Ben Carlos. So
Yes.
when can we do, before the election and petitioning, introduce something at City Hall? Will you do something to show good faith before and show all the people of New York that you would be rooting out corruption in real estate?
So yes to transparency. If I can carry the bill, that's what I'm trying to find out, if I can actually carry the bill, or whether or not it's going to have to be Kalos. And I think you and I went back and forth. So let's just hammer that down. But I think I will pressure anybody who is leading that bill to bring it to the floor. HPD and the corruption that you're have exposed is an important conversation, especially since we're going to be putting a lot of responsibility for an agency that may take on ideas like bringing efficacy to NYCHA. I think the work that we want to do is going to require HPD. If we need to, if we're going to municipalize more apartments in the city of New York, we're going to need an agency, and HPD is going to have to be ready to take that on. But we're going to have to root out corruption and misuse of funds. So, I mean, you have my commitment. Everybody on this call, you have my commitment, and let's just work with Kalos to figure out who's going to lead that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Ellsworth. Lynn?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. So I wanted to point out that as of December of last year, according to city statistics, only 2,000 housing units were built under the MIH program.
That's
Now,
right.
some 50,000 units were built using other programs, low-income tax credits. But it sounds like MIH is part of the fail here, that housing built with MIH is what's causing displacement pressure. Would you abandon MIH and go for a different housing approach?
Would I abandon MIH? Yes. One, it hasn't built us the units. It is causing a lot of issues in communities about what's actually getting built with the AMIs. That's actually going to cause displacement. Is causing displacement. I think there's a lot more the public can do with a public bank by funding a lot of this construction to ensure that we get closer to 100% affordable. Those are the two big projects in Sunset Park that I proposed or approved city money to help and support with a lot of the programs that you're talking about, low income tax credits, and some state programs as well. But yes, that MIH did not work, and we need to bring in more public funding to support deeper affordable at 20 to 30% AMI.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.
I think we have Pete Davies.
Pete.
Okay, Carlos, hi.
Hi, Pete. Good to see you.
Where do you stand on the current legislation introduced by Speaker Johnson to amend the city charter, Intro 2186, that will create a top-down procedure for land use decisions throughout New York City for a comprehensive planning, but will also severely limit community input and interaction and decision-making.
So two things I want to say about this legislation. I think it's about time we're having this conversation for real. Comprehensive planning is something we've been working on, myself, Reynoso, and Lander in the Progressive Caucus of the City Council. I do support a citywide comprehensive conversation and instilling neighborhood growth plans in a citywide conversation. I think that those issues that you brought up are real. We can fix that through a legislative process and through a charter process. So I support this concept. It's not done yet, and I think that your critiques and feedback need to be incorporated, and I trust the process that we can take it in. As mayor, though, I want to do a couple more things. I want to go beyond comprehensive planning and build on the incredible amount of work that our neighborhoods have already done in 197A plans and other documents that show growth in their neighborhoods. And I'm thinking about Sunset Park around Industry City. That was a big learning process for me over the 7 years, which landed me with my final decision to not support this mega development of retail, luxury retail, and stand with community. We need more of that kind of political courage across the city and council members, and with a brand new DCP led by a brand new leader that can really think through this with you all.
Thank you. I see Alice is back, so let's try to see if we could unmute Alice.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi,
we
Alice.
can.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
See you.
I
That's
just
okay.
completely went blank. Hi, lovely
Hi.
to see you. Yeah, so just a question on Governor's Island. So what do you see as the future of Governor's Island? Do you support the current proposed rezoning to develop 4.5 million square feet of new construction on the island? And will you insist on any limits on the island's development? There's my question.
What I've seen is it's disheartening. It just slaps us in the face. You know, I'm in Red Hook. I live in Red Hook. I can see it. It's closer to Brooklyn than it is Manhattan. It's always been this place where we have advocated with local communities to connect it. This summer was finally connected through a ferry connection, the closest kind of ferry connection than anywhere else in the city. And so it's very precious to me as a New Yorker. I think I have to question that Alicia Glenn is part of this conversation and where it wants to go. I think we need to start from the beginning about what this needs to be, and really reflect more of the larger needs that we have that are connected to resiliency and preservation, rather than development that's going to bring housing and any other things that are going to really destroy the character of what this island has been growing into. So I do not support it.
Thank you. Maggie Boyd will be our last question.
Okay.
Do we have Maggie?
Yes, you do.
Great.
Carlos, I have a question
Hi.
about eliminating the SHSAT for the three big high schools, Brooklyn Tech, Stuyvesant, and Bronx Science. Do you agree with that? And if you do, what would be your plan to desegregate those schools? And if you don't agree with it, then what do you think should be done?
So Maggie, I support the removal of the screens, and I want to bring the learning that I had in District 15 when we removed as a district through the parent power the middle school screens, and we learned so much about the process. And being part of the Sunset Park contingency as a council member, I learned a couple things about this, that the segregation isn't just about racial segregation, what that all and we talk about it a lot. I think Nice White Parents gave us a really great understanding about it as a podcast, but it was happening in real life. The Sunset Park parents were saying, you know, our schools are diverse. There are 15 different languages that are spoken in our Sunset Park schools. We may not have white kids, but what we need too, though, is resources. And so there's an equity conversation that we need to fill with the state and city funding that needs to bring equity in school funding across the board. And now that COVID really exposed the fact that these buildings are falling apart, we need to bring in through this Green New Deal a massive transformation of our city districts public schools. And so that's what we're going to do. And the capital budget is ready to balloon dramatically with the borrowing bonding power that we have. I've been in the city. I've been working in the city for 16 years, managing Borough President Marty Markowitz's capital budget. I understand how this works and can really see us with leadership grow the capital budget and bring the resources to these schools that desperately need it.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to have a few questions, Carlos.
Okay, go ahead.
That I've asked other candidates, which is, who is your second choice for mayor based on the ranked choice voting?
Who is my second choice?
Yes.
That changes every day, to be honest.
Well, what's your criteria for your second choice?
I think, what is my criteria? Well, my criteria is that I think that the city needs someone who has government experience, has been elected and has been accountable to communities through an elective role. Two, that has really bold plans to transform and use imagination of the city and the people living here to reconstruct and reimagine. And then it has to be someone that reflects the diversity of the city. And so I think that I think Diane Morales might be someone, but the criteria is the criteria. But if you're going to ask me today, that would be my answer.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask some yes/no questions, lightning round.
You got it. Shoot.
So, do you support city control of the MTA?
Yes.
Do you support commercial rent control?
Yes.
A millionaire's tax?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wait, I heard two yeses. So I don't know who else has said yes.
Well, that was my heart speaking and my mind speaking.
Okay, great.
In Maggie's voice.
And then legalization of marijuana?
100%. That should have happened a long time ago.
Great. So that wraps up this segment, Carlos.
Okay.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Well, thank
for
you
your
all.
time.
And stay safe. And I hope you're not in super spreader Super Bowl events. You're not, because you're here. So thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you, Carlos.
See you later. Bye-bye.
And are we ready for Lori?
Yes. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lori, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Maggie. Great to be here.
So this is Chung Sito, president of UDO, and you will have, that's okay, no, you will have 4 minutes for your part of statement, and then we'll go to questions.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for having me on this Super Bowl Sunday. I hope everyone is safe. And of course, Andrew Yang is in thoughts and prayers, and I hope he gets better really, really soon. I have to tell you, when it comes to thinking about the needs and the strengths of downtown Manhattan, it's where I live. It's a place that has such unique strengths as well as opportunities. And yet we've got a lot of work, obviously, work throughout the city, but running for mayor, I'm running for mayor to bring leadership, to bring sanity, to bring common sense to City Hall. My platform, the foundation, is public safety, supported by public health and opening up businesses. This is the absolute foundation on which all innovation, all future opportunity depends. And I feel very strongly about the ways in which our current leadership has failed us, particularly during these last 6 to 8 months. And I'd love to talk more about that. I'd love to answer any questions that you have. I've had a good experience listening to my colleague Carlos, and I greatly respect, as with so many of these mayoral forums, I greatly respect the seriousness with which New Yorkers take this process. Clearly, the next mayoral election is going to be so critically important in determining the recovery of our city and determining the way ahead. And I'd love to talk to you about my ideas. So with that, I'll cede the remaining of my upfront time because I'd just like to jump into the Q&A. That's where I think the learning really gets interesting and fun and productive all around. So back to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, we begin with Megan Malvern.
Hi, Megan.
Megan is unmuted.
Megan. Okay. Megan, can you hear us? If you hear us, you're already on mute, so.
I think she had an issue with her text.
Audio?
So come back
Okay.
to her. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I guess Theo.
Hi,
Great.
Lori. This is Theo Chino. Oops, sorry.
So nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for being here. And we had the opportunity to speak, and we talk about the homework and the corruption, but this is about mental health. I am lucky because my wife is a psychiatrist. And as a psychiatrist, she counted that 20% of a patient always went crazy around housing issue and the housing corruption, actually. So have you looked at the impact of housing corruption relation to mental health, and what solution will you have for us? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting your wife and sharing insights and wisdom across the mental health spectrum. I will tell you, this is a serious, serious issue. We know that even before the pandemic, social isolation was widely spread as an issue. Suicide rates have been going up, not just in the military and veteran population, but across our country over these last 20 years in the 21st century. We also know the critical importance that housing plays. It's one of the reasons why, this shift in emphasis, it used to be, back in the 80s and 90s, folks would talk about the continuum of care and where you had to sort of get clean and sober and you had to do this and that before you would actually qualify for housing. I think it's been a big step forward, the housing first model that understands just how critical it is to have a home, to have a sense of permanency and safety. Everything comes back to safety in this life, whether it be us as individuals. We know that none of us are our best selves unless we are feeling safe and are actually safe. The same is true for the city, and housing couldn't be a more important relationship between mental health and the importance, the criticality of housing. So thank you so much for raising that. I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about the mental health end of this in particular, if you like, but I want to cede back Chung in case there are some other questions that have come up as well.
Sure, we can come back to that. Next is Catherine Hughes.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, yeah, nice to see you again. I remember bumping into it one Center Street.
Yes.
As a fellow FIDI resident, I know you're aware of the resiliency for Lower Manhattan. So can you tell me, what your thoughts are here to protect, not only Lower Manhattan, but the 520 miles? And what are your thoughts about the U.S. Army Corps study as well? Thank you.
Sure. I think that the next mayor, she's going to have her hands full for sure. But I think one of the first things that she's going to need to do is to relook everything that we've learned and which we've done since Superstorm Sandy. So what that'll be closing in on almost 10 years. I think we need to look for those, what I call the L train solutions, the 14th Street bus solutions. I mean, that's in transit, obvious, but the point is to look at old solutions anew and see what has changed in the meantime in terms of technologies, innovation. I think that there's no question. I've seen a lot of, sort of the controversy and tension between New Yorkers who feel like, gosh, you're going to save Lower Manhattan and Wall Street and all that goes with it, but Staten Island isn't getting what they need, or Brooklyn's not getting what they need. Well, the truth remains that we have to do a city-wide updated assessment, which of course has to protect all of the most vulnerable areas and has to also keep in mind that climate disruption threatens those neighborhoods who are most vulnerable, most underserved. And we have to, particularly in light of all that has been exposed by this pandemic, I think we need to relook where we are with a different lens. We also need to be looking for a greater role for public-private partnerships, because I think we all know that the fiscal situation is going to be pretty tough. But one aspect of the budget reality is that I think we have to be much smarter about looking for partnerships both with the private sector, philanthropy, individual foundations, as well as different levels of government. The state, the feds. I'm looking right now as I get ready to launch my Open for Business plan within the next 10 days or so. It's amazing how much money is left on the table when we fail to apply for the grants from the federal level, and the different ways in which we can be creative and look at this from a regional perspective. I'm also very much drawn to the Regional Plan Association and their perspective on this, as well as a whole host of issues that lend themselves well to a systems approach that encompasses the entire city and the entire region.
Great, thank you, Lori. We just want to remind you that we're trying to keep the answers to 2 minutes and questions to 45 seconds. And next, I think Jim, can we try Jim for it?
Yes, just so you know that Megan, I believe, has been able to connect if you want to call on her.
Okay, yes, let's try Megan first and then Jim.
Hi, Megan.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, but you're on my regular, just talking through the computer. So if my son suddenly bursts out, I apologize. So
Okay.
Housing is a major problem for all over the city, right? All over the world right now. Luxury towers that come in and they have a 3 luxury unit to every 1 affordable unit in the neighborhood just sort of creates more of this problem between how many of people are of certain economic statuses in one area versus another. It's 3 to 1. And then it ends up driving out some grocery stores we've heard about, like in Chinatown, and there's another one just recently that a new luxury tower is going to go in. Instead of depending upon luxury builders to come in and give us some of these affordable units, what's a better way to do it? Because a lot of the times they're not affordable, or they pay into another fund and the units go someplace else, which doesn't help diversify the area. So I just want to know if you think that it's wise to use big money real estate for city planning, or would you look at it a different way and maybe speak to this idea about the new top-down planning that's being proposed through City Council?
Well, thanks so much, Megan. This is a huge concern, clearly. And I will stand by the need, and I will protect the need for early engagement with communities and residents of a given area for which a proposal is being put forward. I think that this is something that all too often is given window dressing. It's a shortcoming of the recent council's proposed plan on a comprehensive strategy for long-term planning. I applaud the intent. I do think that we will not get anywhere out of the current scrum that we've been in, and the needless division and tension and hostility between New Yorkers and developers, and even New Yorkers against each other within a given neighborhood. So I think that, one of the opportunities that comes out of the current crisis is to look at, first of all, we knew even before the pandemic, we had excess luxury units that have not been sold, and even the ones that have been sold, so many of them just stay empty. I think there's some opportunity. I also know there's opportunity in terms of commercial and hotel real estate that we can be very creative and look to develop some permanent affordable housing and across the range of incomes. I think that's really important. I think moderate income housing is something that all too often gets left out, but it's so it's so critical for us to engage early, stay engaged with community members and listen to them, not just brief them, but engage with residents so that we understand, for example, in Chinatown, what the impact is, not just of the discrimination and the ugliness that has come forward in this last year related to the pandemic, but the fact that, they know their neighborhood, they know what matters most. And if we listen to them and give them an active voice, just using Chinatown as an example, but every community, I think, has its own version of that. And I would really look forward as mayor to leading that kind of inclusive and respectful process.
Thank you for that. Lori, is Jim ready?
Hi, Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jim, we can hear you.
Oh, great, great. Thank you very much. I'm going to very quickly ask you three things and you can hopefully answer all of them or choose the ones that you want to. Because of the redundancy in the workforce because of new technology, from PhDs who become baristas to people whose just jobs are either taken out of the country or replaced by machinery, do you support the concept of a guaranteed income? Also, in the police department, there are some good police, but there are also bullies with guns strapped on who shoot. How can we return the public servant aspect of the police department back to being peacekeepers?
Oh, Jim, thank you so much for those questions. Yes, actually, on the first question first, I am open to the universal basic income. When you read and understand really the massive disruptive changes that are just right in front of us. I mean, we come through quite a bit, but it's nothing, as you well know, it sounds like, what compared to what is going to happen with autonomous driving of vehicles and trucks and all kinds of, heretofore sort of what people have considered, the professional or white collar jobs that are going to be safe. No, it's a massive disruption and we have to plan for it. And the pandemic provides an impetus, I think, for really getting serious about this now. The second question that you asked, help me again, Jim, you just give me a word.
Police officers as public servants and peacekeepers.
Yes. So, Jim, this is so near and dear to my heart. I served for nearly 30 years in the Army as a physician, a public health authority, an entrepreneur, as well as a combat vet. I know the culture of the military, kind of the special ops culture. I know the guardian culture, which is so important for us to restore in our police department. And I think that, well, what I would love, Jim, I've put out my public safety plan. Early in November, I led with a 3R strategy: reimagining, reinvesting, and restoring bonds of trust between police and community. This next week, I'm unpacking that 3R strategy, and I go into much more detail about how we both select, how we train, how we discipline, how we build that culture, that guardian culture. But what I will not now, not ever endorse is a defund the police strategy. I feel like we've got the best police force in the nation. No doubt we've got work to do, but I would love to share that with you and to get your feedback on that, because this couldn't be more important. We cannot lead forward into the future with our new New York unless and until we fix and restore public safety and bonds between communities and cops.
Okay. Thanks for that. Next, we have Patricia Lalaria.
Patricia, hi there.
Hi, thanks for being here. In a recent tweet that You said it is disturbingly tragic to consider the plight of parents and kids of all races who are subject to rigid anti-racist pedagogy, reducing our shared humanity and history to all or nothing agenda violates what America stands for. Wake up, New York City. What do you think anti-racism violates what America stands for?
And so let me, Patricia, I'm so glad that you raised this question. It stirred up quite a bit of discussion on Twitter, which has its distinct limitations as a place for talking about serious things and having conversations about matters that really count. So what I was responding to in that tweet in response to that op-ed that a parent in Manhattan who's got a white male, 48, 49-year-old parent with 2 kids in public school, and as he recounted his experience of feeling like he couldn't speak up to the teachers or the school leadership, and his kids were coming home with questions. And I felt like it was beyond tragic that we're to this point where parents and kids of all races are in this position at a time when it's never been more important to have conversations about the history of racism, the ways in which it is still endemic and systemically present in our institutions, and the work that we all have to do going forward. So let me say this. I know one of the comments that came up on Twitter had to do with the dad had said something about how he had read a book and that had been recommended, and that it was just, I think it was, he said something about how it was crazy to think that the drug war is about that the drug war is racist. Okay, listen, believe me, as a physician, as a military senior officer, and as someone who has spent a lot of time, in fact, as a White House fellow, was at the Office of National Drug Control Policy. I know fully that the beginning of the war on drugs, President Nixon, it was explicitly a racist strategy. That
Lori, so we just want to remind you that we had a time commitment of just 2 minutes. So we're going to close with some few questions from me and maybe a lightning round. Okay. So I've asked this for all the candidates is who's your second choice for mayor in your ranked choice voting?
Sure, Catherine Garcia.
Thank you. And how, just as a follow-up to now your answer to the tweet, how would you integrate our public schools?
So I would first bring on a new chancellor. I would eliminate some of the redundancy and waste at the top end. I'd power down resources to the principal and the teachers, and I would have an inclusive process. I would want to talk with faculty, the teachers, the principals. I'd want to bring in parents and the community, but I would really, I would acknowledge that these conversations are uncomfortable while insisting that we have them in an inclusive and respectful way.
Okay, some yes or no questions. Do you support city control of the MTA?
I do not.
Do you support commercial rent control?
I do not.
Do you support a millionaire's tax?
I do not.
And finally, do you support legalization of marijuana?
I do support a path to legalization of marijuana that starts with decriminalization, that expunges the records of those who have been unfairly burdened with, again, the war on drugs is explicitly come from racist roots. But I want to make sure that the public health factors and provisions and safeguards are well in place. And in that respect, I'm glad that New York State has taken a little more time because we have a lot to learn from other locales, other states that have gone forward with this. But yes, I do support a path forward to legalization.
Great, thank you, Lori. So this concludes your, I guess, your session on our great forum today. So thank you so much for participating.
Well, Chung, thank you so much. And, you know, it's always hard to answer yes or no questions. So I'd love to be able to expand on some of those because I do have other thoughts, but I wanted to respect your process and the way in which you asked the question, particularly on commercial rent reform, as well as the millionaire's tax, but we'll have time to do that. Let's consider this the beginning of an ongoing conversation, and I would look forward to that. Thank you so much, Downtown Independent Democrats. Great to be with you all.
Thank you. And then I am just going to throw it back to Richard.
All right. Thank you, Chung. Hi, Richard.
Thanks, Lori.
Hi, Laurie. Thanks so much for joining, and thank you all here. I'm pretty impressed with the stamina of everyone here who's really stuck it out in this Sunday. And thank you so much, Chung, for sharing the day with me and making this happen. So with that, we have Super Bowl in front of us. I'm sure your beers are cold and your hands, I hope, are warm. And so enjoy the night. And thank you for coming. Thanks to the clubs for joining in this great event tonight. It's really wonderful to see us work together, and what a voice we can be as a group from 14th Street in Manhattan, New York City, down through actually the Statue of Liberty. So
Thanks, Richard.
good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night. Thanks for all the team members for your help today. It's just been amazing. It's well run, and go Chiefs. It's my thing.
Yeah, I'm for that.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.